Shall we start, colleagues? Can we settle down, please? Firstly, Tebogo, maybe you can explain. I don't know why there are so many people here. Because today is just another boring day in Parliament. So maybe you can explain to me what's going on. Secondly, I take it people know there are three issues on the agenda today: SAA, the program for the fourth quarter, and the Twin Peaks bill. So DG may not know this, but the rule is that the media and civil society can't leave a meeting until it ends. So I take it you're going to be here till 4:45 today. Those are the rules. Ask Advocate Jenkins, wherever he might be. So welcome everybody to the National Treasury. The Deputy Minister is here, the DG, the board of SAA and its management. We are looking at what is called the interim annual financial statement. Now, presumably at the beginning, the DM and the board chair will explain to us why it's an interim annual financial statement. And the financial statement we have is the 2014-2015 one. We don't have the 2015-2016, so they'll explain that to us. Secondly, last week on Wednesday, you will recall the committee decided, at least I on behalf of the committee, and I subsequently reported to you and you agreed, that whether SAA and the minister were able to table their final report or not, this committee will not consider postponing the meeting for today. The Treasury and the SAA will have to come to explain to us why they haven't met their 15 September deadline, and we were not going to forego having this meeting. And you'll recall I reported to you that I told the minister that even if it's not a final report, we would like it tabled whatever happens by the 15th, which was of course done. Subsequent to that, I exchanged with Mr. Lees and told him that, look, this is an interim financial report you'll be receiving before the end of business today, that's last Wednesday. It will not cover all the issues and certainly not the 2 financial years. So we will have no choice but to split it into 2 sittings. One now, that's today, and the other as soon as possible after the MTBPS. Now, as you know, in the fourth quarter, colleagues, we have no choice. The rules of Parliament dictate, the Money Bills Act dictates that we have these deadlines to meet once the MTBPS is tabled. And before that, as you know, in terms of the norms of Parliament, we have to do our PRRRs. So in short, as we look at the program at 2 o'clock today, you will see what we're doing. We will then meet with the SAA again with their full reports. So we've broken the meeting up because we have no choice into 2 tranches. Today from 10 to 1, and then we'll meet again. Tentatively, we set it for the 30th of November. We can bring it forward if the committee decides at 2 o'clock to 15th of November. I have communicated that to the ministry and also to SAA board chair, that it be split into 2 halves. Then beyond that, there's nothing for me to say but hand over to the Deputy Minister. Perhaps I should say one more thing, and perhaps I should stand up when I say this. Any difference, but one lives in hope. It is to say, colleagues, comrades, we must be robust and vigorous and rigorous in our oversight. It's required of us by the Constitution, and in any case, our various parties have particular conceptions of the role of Parliament. There's nothing wrong in doing that. But at the same time, there is no reason to be indecorous. For want of a better word, not be civil. Whoever we are engaging with, from civil society or the industry or the department. So let's not confuse robust and vigorous debate. There's some music being played. If I had the time, I'll tell you a little story, but there isn't the time, about the ICU and the 1920s and a cinema in Durban called the Nas Cinema and what was going on there when there was a fight for leadership. But I take it that's not the issue, right? Okay, fine. So let me just say this, that please be as vigorous and robust as you like. And on the other hand, also, can I plead with the ministry, the department, and SAA, can you reply to questions very precisely and clearly so that members don't feel you are escaping responsibility to respond to questions. Thank you very much.
Chair, it's 7 minutes past 10. The Deputy Minister is present. The Acting CEO is present. I can't help noticing that the Chairperson appears not to be present.
Can I handle that?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, thanks, Chair. I thought that because there's a new board of SAA appointed, we're going to get an opportunity to know the faces of the names that are there. Who is the chairperson, who is the deputy chairperson, and everyone, so that we're able to interact with the board that we can identify. I thought that will be the first item before the SAA presents the financials. Sure.
Interestingly, Peter Maluleke is a former chair of the Public Enterprises Committee, as many of you will know. Congratulations on your appointment. I hope you know what you've let yourself in for. All good wishes. I also happen, Floyd, to be a former chair. And the norm is not to have the whole board ever. I don't think we've ever done that except maybe in exceptional circumstances. And to be fair to the chair of the board, she did phone me to ask, would I expect all the board members to be here? I said that is not the norm. I think there's how many of you? 13. Is that right, DM? Are there 13? DM? How many board members are there? 13? Yeah, I've never heard of that, except maybe if it's a crisis situation. But what you are saying is correct, Floyd. One of the things I was going to ask the DM is to give us a profile, not now, just give us a range of the skills and give us in written form the names of the people and why they are appropriate to serve on the board. That's a fair question to ask. If it is the view of the committee that all 11 people should fly up from wherever they're based to Cape Town, then it's unprecedented, right? And really, it's going to be a huge cost, and we'll have to justify that. Also, as you'll recall, this committee has repeatedly said, well, the committees that I've served have repeatedly said to departments that it's no point bringing 10 people from a department and only 2 people speak. It's a waste of resources. We want to contain expenditure. So in short, Floyd, if that is the view of the majority, that the entire board should be here, we can do that at the next meeting. But I would strongly urge against it, and I think we should put that matter for serious consideration at the end of this meeting. But that we should know who the board is, and what their skills are, and what they bring to the SAA, that's a very fair question to ask. But let's mull over this thing. I had told her that she should have the board chair, as I understand it, the deputy chair, and preferably at least one other person with experience of the aviation industry, and one person possibly with financial skills. That's what I said to her. I don't know who in the board qualifies in that regard, but I wouldn't imagine that more than 4 of you be here. So just to explain the norm, Floyd, and for those of you who are newer members here, that is the way it is. But let's hand over to the DM. Can you explain where is the chair?
Can I just apologize? We've got a message now. She started at the doctor. She's coming. She's joining us. But the deputy chair is coming in. She's at the door as we speak. And there are a couple of other board members that are joining us.
All right. We know officials of the department, right? And by now we should at least. There's nobody here that we don't know, presumably. Let's hand over to Peter. Introduce your team, please.
My name is Peter Maluleke. I think you've already introduced me, Chair. I can't see another member of the board now. I think they're on their way in.
Can I suggest that it's quite unacceptable? With due respect, Peter, you've been here. By the way, we call each other by first names, and if we know you from the board, we do. But if you're not happy, then we can call you by your surname. It's just that we're so bored sitting here all the time together that it's a stress to call somebody Mr. Unless they don't show collegiality, in which case you will see. As a chair, I don't call them by their first name. I'm not obliged to. So basically, let me put this to you. It's not acceptable, DM, and Peter, you're the only board person here, that it's now a good 12 minutes past 10, given the importance of this meeting, that you do not have a full delegation here. If the chair is unfortunately out, surely the deputy chair should be here on time. Partly we convene meetings at 10 and not at 9 DM. I mean, you must hold these people to account, is to encourage people to fly in the first flight in the morning and be here in time, so they can't complain if we meet at 9 that they're late. We're meeting at 10. Sorry?
She comes in.
Ah, okay. Can you communicate to our unhappiness about her being late?
It's not her.
Okay, thank you. Right. Can we move on, please? DM, can you start?
Okay. Thank you very much. Can I apologize for this? I'm told they are stuck outside and they will be joining us very soon. As I indicated, the chair, we got a message that she had a problem, medical problem. She started with a doctor. She'll be joining us as we proceed with the meeting. Chair, I thought maybe the first point to start off, let me thank all members, honorable members of the committee for allowing us to appear before you today. We have here the executive management from SAA, the acting CEO, CFO, and of course we've got the Director General and the Deputy Director General and a couple of officials from Treasury who are part of the meeting. Can I start off by dealing with the annual financial statement question? Section 55 of the PFMA requires that SOCs submit their audited annual financial statements to the Executive Authority within 5 months of the end of the financial year. Section 65 requires that the Executive Authority tables the annual financial statements in Parliament within 1 month of having received them. SAA has been unable to finalize the 2014-15 annual financial statements on a going concern basis without the support of additional going concern guarantees. It would not have been prudent for government to support the airline with additional government guarantees without first taking steps to mitigate the fiscal risk. In fact, granting SAA another guarantee at the time before taking such steps would have posed serious fiscal risk. SOCs, and specifically government's contingent liability exposure to SOCs, remain one of the key risks to the country's fiscal framework, and an area that is being closely monitored by Treasury and government on the one hand, but also rating agencies are looking at it very seriously because it is a major area of concern. Government had indicated its policy in the budget review that entities receiving support from government will be required to demonstrate sound business plans, improve governance, and address operational inefficiencies. As a first step, it was necessary that a full-strength board be appointed. From the 1st of September 2016, 11 new non-executive directors were appointed to the board of SAA for a 3-year period. Cabinet approved that the chairperson be reappointed for a period of 1 year for purposes of continuity. The minister met the board on the 9th September 2016. He underlined that the primary focus of the board is to return the airline to financial sustainability. The airline's current strategic plan, 2016 corporate plan, indicates that the airline is expected to return to profitability in 2020-2021. The board have been asked with strengthening the strategy through inter alia, implementing a more aggressive cost containment measures, The network and fleet plan must be refined based on the sound business case so that the airline takes advantage of opportunities to scale back the operations of the airline to focus only on operating routes which positively contribute to the profitability of the airline. Close routes that have been making losses and ensure that the network plan is aligned with other state-owned airlines. The airline strategy needs to better differentiate the airline, enabling it to continue to operate effectively through addressing the customer value proposition. The Minister also tasked the board with appointing the CEO and CFO and other key executives in consultation with the Minister. You would also recall that there was a process that was started by the previous board. Our view was that the new board must review that and even reopen it and start a new process. It must also ensure that SAA secures funding to meet liquidity requirements. These steps would stabilize and enable turnaround of the airline. It was on this basis that a further 4.7 billion going concern guarantee was approved. These key steps were set as conditions to the guarantee. The going concern guarantee put the board in a position where they could finalize both 2014 and 15, as well as 2015 and 16 for tabling in Parliament. I'm informed that the newly appointed board have been diligently working on finalizing both sets of financials. The board have also informed me that both sets of financials were approved on Sunday and are now being prepared for formal submission to the Minister and tabling in Parliament. We fully expect that the Minister will be in a position to table 2014-15 on Thursday and the 2015-16 annual financial statement before the 30th of September 2016 deadline prescribed in the PFMA. Nevertheless, in the interest of promoting transparency, we believed it to be important that the draft annual financial statement be shared with Parliament in the meanwhile. The committee should note that technical issues identified by the auditors have resulted in material change to the financial performance and financial positions of the airline, which SAA will take you through shortly. And I want to add by saying that I know that there have been noises around the guarantee. We believe that both for operational reasons as well as strategic reasons, because we believe that if we did not provide the going concern guarantee to SAA, that would have posed systemic risk for all SOCs in the country and even affect our positions in terms of rating agencies' attitude to South Africa. At this point, I'll ask the SAA management to probably make the presentation. Or the deputy chair has just arrived here. Triforce Ramona and Swazi Chabalala and Peter Shivasa. Chiseve. That's why I nearly said Chivas. Thank you, Chair. Over to SAA management.
Good morning, members, and we really appreciate the time to present SAA results this morning. Before I delve into the presentation, I just want to dedicate this to the men and women of SAA who keep the airline flying. I think sometimes we are lost in what's happening in newspapers and we don't know why the aircraft stay in the sky. And it's because of the hard work of the people. It's because of the pilots that we have, the technical staff, the ground handling staff, the people that ensure that you've got food in the aircrafts. So I really would like to say to them, they must keep up the good work. And we really appreciate, as the executive currently, the efforts that they are putting in keeping SAA flying, even under these difficult conditions. I will then go into the presentation. Our agenda stands as follows. We'll be looking at just a brief overview. We will also look at presenting the 2014-15 high level, as well as 15-16 annual financial results. This will be followed by just looking at the current performance of the company, where we look at the Q1 results of 2016-17. I think in just looking at the context there, ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that these are results from 14-15. It reflects the performance 2 years ago, and I do think that we have at this moment changed to some extent some of the conditions that were prevailing in 2014-15, and the performance of the company, although challenged, is slowly moving in the positive direction. I think we continue to make positive strides in improving our performance, as will be seen with the high-level presentation of the 14-15 results and the 15-16 results. The board, as was indicated, met on Sunday, and we have deliberated on a number of things apart from approving the financials that will be presented. The board deliberated on the statutory subcommittees of the board, so they really hit the ground running. And we are comfortable as executives that as we continue and going forward, we will get the direction that we require from our directors and the new board. In fact, on behalf of the staff of SAA, we welcome the new board, and hopefully we will see the organization taking strides going forward. Although our revenues were suppressed to some extent, we continued on a cost compression drive, and the results will be presented, which shows you the resilience of the people in ensuring that we adhere to those costs through looking at various strategies of compressing costs. If you look at our contribution to the economy of this country, I think we do contribute quite a bit in terms of the jobs that have been created through SAA. It's about 33,000. And our contribution to the GDP is about 0.3%, which equates to 9 billion. And I think this is a positive contribution that the airline is making to the economy of the country. I think it's important to note that we do have challenges as the airline, which I will talk to briefly. I will not go through through everything on the slide, but I will just talk to a number that I think management is focusing currently its attention to getting those problems resolved. And the problems that we have highlighted before, and they're in the public domain, they include the weak capital base. And I think there's a number of actions that are taken, including the debt consolidation, which we think will aid us somewhat, but this will be covered by the CFO as he talks about the results. Now, the pressure on revenues, they are not only felt by SAA, it's airlines across Africa that are feeling this, and we are not immune to that, and the market conditions are affecting us all. I do know that some airlines in the African continent are doing quite good, better than us, but I think with the focus that we keep on this, we will be able to make strides. I have spoken already about the costs. I think the thing that I'd like to address as well is the issue of leadership instability. I have heard in a number of quarters, people wanted to know the status of where we are with the executives that are currently some under suspension and some who have left the company. I think I can just maybe address the issue of Sylvain. Sylvain Boss, the case took place, and he was found by the chair not guilty, but the decision was taken to take that case on review, and it's currently in the labor court. Tulimpierre, who was the GM HR, the case was heard 2 weeks ago, but they asked for a postponement. And so we hope that we will be able to resolve that matter soon. There was the issue of the Chief Procurement Officer, Masimba Dawa. His case was ahead and it was finalized, and he has left SAA. And also there is an issue of Cynthia Stimple. The hearing was held, and the hearing is currently at the CCMA, where it's being reviewed. So we are hopeful that with the board forming its subcommittees, and one of which is the HR subcommittee, we would be able to see the appointment of the people that have left as soon as possible. That includes the CEO, the CFO, as well as other key positions within the executives. So that is something that perhaps I wanted to point out, that of course we have done something with regards to the executives that are currently on suspension. I think the other thing that I would like to point out is the issue of reputation. I think our airline is affected to a large extent by what's happening in the media. And I think it's important for us to focus our attention at taking the airline away from the media, because you see, when you are not spoken about every day, you then tend to focus your attention more on performance. And I think for the 6 months where it was quiet, we could see good results coming out of the organization. And our strategy currently is to try and deal with these issues of being in the press all the time. So I'd like to stop there and hand over to our interim CFO to present the financial results.
Thank you, CEO. Chairperson, I would like to first highlight to just briefly talk about the highlights that SAA encountered in year 2014-15. The first one being one of the things that the airline embarked on was the LTTS in terms of the programs that we embarked on. The first one was through the interventions and also checking what the airline can do and where the costs are and where the costs are spiking. One of the programs that was initiated in year 2012 was the cost compression program. And we're happy to say the cost compression program yielded results to the extent where in year 2014-15, an amount of about 2.2 billion was achieved. That was the target that was set for the airline for that 2 years, and the target was achieved. One of the areas that we looked at, the board and management looked at the routes and looked at the profitability and also looked at the routes that are making losses. And to that extent of that exercise, a route that was going to Beijing and Mumbai was closed. And a new route was successfully implemented. The route was between Accra, Ghana, and Washington, D.C. Those, Chairperson, are the highlights for 2014-15. If you allow me, Chairperson, just to highlight briefly the highlights for 2015-16. Again, continuing with the cost compression, the airline managed in 1 year to save an amount of 1.1 billion. These are sustainable savings, Chairperson. The airline embarked on headcount reduction, the rationalization. Again, this was an exercise that was done through the LTTS, where we're implementing initiatives in terms of rationalizing the headcount of the company. And all this process was done via a voluntary severance packages, and we're happy to say there were no retrenchments in this process. All the people that have left the organization, they took the voluntary packages. The amount, the number of the employees that have left was about 906, and the costs that were incurred by the company are amounting to approximately 250 million. And one of the key important factors and the decisions that were taken by SAA together with the shareholder was the finalization of the Airbus swap deal. When I talk about the numbers, I will talk about the impact that the swap deal had on the numbers. We increased the revenue on ancillary revenues. As I've talked about the cessation or the close of the routes that were making losses. In year 2015-16, the Abu Dhabi route was closed with effect from 1st March 2016. And for 2015-16, Chairperson, we've seen an operating profit. The company posted profit at EBITDA level. EBITDA level is operating profit before interest, tax, and amortization. As the acting CEO has highlighted that the company is having challenges specifically on revenue because of the competition that SAA operates in, especially with the low-cost carriers. We've seen revenue. Now that was the performance when you're comparing 16 versus 15, where the revenues, we're posting revenues that are below the budget that we've targeted for. One of the impact that are hitting SAA most is most of the operating expenses are foreign currency denominated. For an example, if you take 2014-15 and you split the operating costs, 60% of the operating cost of SAA are foreign currency denominated, while only 40% of revenue is foreign currency denominated. So there's a 20% exposure in terms of if there's a volatility on the rand, and then SAA is highly impacted by that. Just quickly, Chairperson, if I take you through to the numbers when I'm comparing 2013-14 and also 2014-15, briefly, I'll talk firstly about the loss for the year. For 2014-15, the final numbers as they were approved by the board of SAA posted a loss of 5.6 billion. The loss of 5.6 billion, you compare it to the 2013-14, which was approximately 2.6 billion. There are key factors that are contributing to the loss of 5.6 billion. The first one, just to highlight, is the impairment. The impairment that was posted in the year 2014-15 was about 1.9 billion. That 1.9 billion is made up of two elements. The first one is made up of the impairments that came with the A320-200s. This is the swap deal that I talked about earlier to say this is the decision that was taken by the shareholder together with the board, where the decision was taken to swap the aircrafts that were bought. It goes back as 2002, where the agreement was signed, and the contract came where SAA was purchasing 20 A320-200s. 10 aircrafts were delivered. These are the aircrafts that came with impairment. Basically, what happened on the contract, on the purchase contract itself, it came with escalation clauses, where on a yearly basis there's an escalation clause. So by the time the aircrafts were delivered to SAA, the market value was less than the price that we're paying. So in terms of the accounting standards, you have to impair, because you cannot overstate the assets that are in your income statement or your accounting records. Hence, I'm saying the decision to swap the 320s with 330s was the best one in terms of affecting the business. Hence, when you see on that schedule, in year 2015-16, you don't see any further impairment. Those impairments, the last ones came in 2015-16 at the delivery of 6 aircrafts. One of the cost elements, when you look at one, allow me to talk about the costs, and high level, I'll talk about revenue. If you look at revenue, there's an increase of 6%. Sorry, if you look at costs, there's an increase of 6%. They have moved from 30 billion to 32 billion. key important aspects that I would like to highlight there is, the first one is the fluctuation of the rand. We've seen the rand weakening in year 2014-15. The rand has weakened by 10% in that year. And that rand weakening, as I said, the operating cost of SAA, 60% of them are foreign currency denominated. So the 10% decline or weakening of the rand has showed a huge impact on the cost of SAA. But again, in the latter part of the year, we've seen the Brent crude oil reducing. So it has come outside, kind of neutralized, because the situation could have been worse than what we are seeing. When you look at total income, in 2013-14, it was 30 million, 30.2, and in year 2014-15, it was 30.1. So the revenue is flat, as I've highlighted, that the revenue is flat because of the tough competition in the market. Domestically, we're seeing low-cost carriers entering the market. In year 2014-15, regionally, the airline has been affected by Ebola. When we quantified that, we've seen on the reduction of passenger numbers, it affected the yields, it also affected the fares. So when you quantified the possible loss on the revenue, it was about 500 million. So those are the highlights, Chair, that I would like to highlight on year 2014-15. And if I go to if you allow me to compare 2014-15 and 2015-16. In year 2015-16, as it has been approved as well by the board on Sunday, in that year, SAA is posting a loss of 1.4 billion. Chairperson, I would not say it's a huge improvement in terms of numbers. One, because of the decisions that were taken by the company together with the shareholder. But when you look at revenue, the airline is still struggling because of the competition, as I've indicated. But the decisions that were taken in terms of the swap deal, we've seen the improvement. As you see that we don't have the impairment of 1.9 billion, but we see the finance cost growing. The finance costs are growing more because there's a heavy reliance. The company is relying heavily on the guarantees. So hence you see the increase there. Again, on the revenue is stagnant because we're still sitting at 30 billion. But it's not like the company is not doing anything. With the introduction the appointment of the new board, we're happy on Sunday that they've highlighted that they will also form a task team, where that team will oversee management in terms of implementing the long-term turnaround strategy. The operating costs as well have gone down. They have gone down because of two elements. In fact, it's the neutralization of the Brent crude price, because the Brent crude oil, it has reduced the price by 34%. So that is the advantage where the SAA then capitalized on. But in terms of the weak currency, in year 2015-16, the currency weakened by 26%. Hence, the results are showing that. Looking into the balance sheet, as the DM has said, that SAA couldn't finalize the financial statements for 2014-15 without the financial support from the shareholder. It shows by looking at the total liabilities and the total assets. The balance sheet of SAA is very weak, but we're working tirelessly with the shareholder to see what can be done. But that is there's no major movements that have happened on the balance sheet. So the balance sheet is as presented, Chairperson. Allow me to give you the highlights for Q1 of 2016-2017 financial year end. In 2016-17, as we have said, As much as we are aware as the management together with the board of SAA that you cannot compress the cost of the airline to make the airline profitable, you have to grow the revenue. But we have instilled, and we keep on instilling the culture of compressing the cost where we can. For year 2016-17, we've got a target of 790 million for cost compression. For quarter one, we have managed to save an amount of 181 million. It adds to the 3.3 billion that I've talked about earlier on. SA Technical commenced the weekly maintenance checks in Cape Town. We should see the results of this operation in the latter half of the year. And also, in terms of looking at the revenue, as we have said, we cannot compress the cost for the airline to be profitable. What the commercial is doing is looking at all the routes that we are flying and also checking the possibility of increasing the capacity or increasing the frequencies on the routes that we're already flying, on top of looking at the routes, at the new routes that the company might open. In Libreville, Cotonou, for an example, we've increased the frequency from 2 to 3 per week, and we've removed the non-stops. In Brazzaville, Cotonou, we have increased the frequency from 2 to 3 per week, and we've also removed the non-stops. The slide reflects the quarterly performance. This is the quarter one performance. Also, before I leave that slide, I think I would like to highlight, Chairperson, and say quarter one is normally not a good quarter for SAA, but this year we've seen a decline, rather a shortage in the revenue, and the team is working tirelessly to ensure that we recover and close the gaps to the extent where there's a task team that has been formed, which is chaired by the acting CEO, which involves all the revenue generating units where they need to come and present the revenue to date, the target to date, and the forecast, and in terms of what is it that's going to be done to close the gaps. But the shareholders' compact for quarter one is not a good picture in terms of there are some targets that we have not met, but we're happy to say 66% of our targets have been met. The last slide for the day, Chairperson, is just quickly presenting the quarterly report as we have been requested. This quarterly report compares quarter one of 2016-17 and quarter one of 15-16. So basically checking where we are. The revenue has dropped compared to budget. And again, the budget, I would like to highlight that we have stretched the budget to ensure that we meet the targets and to ensure that we turn around the company quickly. But quarter one, the revenue was below the budget by 10%. But the quarter one results, the revenue was higher than last year's quarter by 7%. On operating costs, the cost, we've seen that the actual was less than the budget by 7%. But when you're comparing it to last year, the expenses were more by 10%. The expenses were more by 10% more because of the fluctuation in the currency. As I've highlighted that last year, the weakening of rand was 10%, and in the 2016-17, it is 23%. But as I've highlighted, that we're working towards closing the gap that we've seen in the quarter one. We'll then close the presentation session, Chairperson, from there.
Thank you very much. Anything else from Treasury and SAA side? No. Sifiso, Dikeledi, Mr. Mania, I can't see whose hand is up there. Mr. Topham. Makosi Pinky. Thank you. Order. Mr. Lees and Floyd. Thandi, why don't you just get on the list as well, and everybody's covered. Right, so then Thandi. Okay. Each of you's got up to half an hour.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, DM. Thank you, DG.
Not serious, I say up to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because we need a second round. We need an engagement.
Yeah.
And remember, this is the first of a two-part exchange. Good?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, DM, DG, SAA, and I'm sure it's proper for me to congratulate the new board and looking forward to further engagement with the board. There is no doubt, Chair, that it has been difficult times for SAA, and I don't wish to be in their shoes to be always in the news. And I take the point which is made by the acting CEO that there's a correlation between their performance and how many times they are in the news. But coming to the questions that I have, it's good that the DM has spoken about the late submission of the annual financial statements, and we're happy that now we're at a position where you have satisfied yourself that the risk that you wanted mitigated by the appointment of the new board that's being taken care of. Going to SAA, can you please just give us a snapshot of the status of the aircrafts that you have? How many aircrafts belong to SAA? How many are being leased? And then that combination, how has it affected the financial stability of the airline? Number two, we saw the SAA going into the market wanting to raise about 15 billion rands. What was the airline trying to achieve? Was this in violation of PFMA or any other legislation which governs SAA? You know that there are a lot of stories were being reported in the press about that. Can you take us into confidence exactly about what was happening there? Chair, I think I must say that a cost saving of about 3.3 billion rands in 2 years, it's a big achievement by any measure, and I think SAA should be congratulated on that. The top line remains a concern because you go with cost containment up to a certain level. I would like you to assure us, usually people always take shortcuts, especially when it comes to maintenance, that your cost containment measures haven't compromised the maintenance of the aircrafts. I don't need to tell you what happens once you start taking shortcuts there. There's also a school of thought that your cost containment was more from low fuel prices. Windfall is nothing to write home about. It was just that windfall which everybody had to take. I would like to hear your comment on that. Chair, there is no doubt there's a concern in this committee about the high turnover of senior management. I hear, for instance, you have just told us what's happening, others on CCMA and so on and so forth. But that's just half the story. I think what we'd like to know is exactly what is happening. Why are you having such a big turnover? And the challenge to the board will be, how do we make sure that we try and prevent this thing going forward? So it's well and good to say that's what we are doing. But for me, what's important is that what has led to this high turnover, and secondly, how do we try and prevent the reoccurrence of these things? Because there's no doubt that it destabilizes the whole company. It cascades to the executive, it cascades to the management, it cascades to the whole staff once there's instability at the top. Lastly, Chair, so much has been said about the evergreen contracts of SAA. One of the things you said, it becomes a very big cost factor. If acting CEO, you can take us into confidence about some of the salient features of these evergreen contracts. And again, we'd like to know what are you doing about them, if anything, because we are told they're a big cost factor into the company. You also talk about that you are not able to increase your revenue, and you're talking to, say, revenues because of competition. But South Africa is opening its skies to everybody, to all and sundry, including Emirates, who's taking everybody in the world as far as competition is concerned. Why is it that? Thank you, Chair.
Which you, I think, Dikeledi is next, Mr. Mania, and thereafter.
Thank you, Chair. Let me take this opportunity to welcome the presentation and also welcome the new board. We are aware that you are 2 weeks, but we also are aware that you have to inherit everything that you have found, and as an oversight committee, we have to ask questions, and you have to clarify or maybe give us information as to how are you going to answer to that, because we need answers as an oversight committee. Chair, according to the forensic report, it is recorded that there are major challenges with supply chain management and contract management. And the question I want to ask is, what is the essence of why, and why this continues, given that there are clear guidelines in terms of the corporate governance? Like I said before, maybe you might not have the answers now, Chair, but if they are not able to answer, at the end of the day, I would like us to agree to a time frame where we will expect them as the new board to go and seek information and present a plan how to deal with these problems. My second question is that we have observed that the KPIs, some of the KPIs are not achieved. And we know that this is historic, it's not new. Then the question is, what are the reasons for this, and why has been no performance management in place to deal with such? I'm also asking this question, giving you a sort of a mandate to say, these are the challenges that we have observed in as far as the KPIs are concerned, and we're saying there should be a performance management plan to address these issues and timeframes attached to the plan, so that we can be able to make an oversight and hold you accountable to those commitments. Chair, there has been a belief that the board has been involved in managerial management operations of the airline at some stages. I would like to know at what stages, if it happened, and according to their assessment, those interventions, have they yielded any result? Because I think it's clear that the board has its own mandate and the management has its own mandate. But as and when they were intervening, was it necessary? What can we say we have achieved in those interventions? Chair, on slide 6 of the presentation on challenges and remedial steps, on number 5, on leadership instability, I know Honorable Buthelez's Fiso have spoken to that. But in terms of the mitigation on that point, it is said that the new board mandate is to fill key vacancies as soon as possible. And according to me, Chair, the statement is open-ended, is too vague. I think there should be a time frame attached to that, so that we can monitor progress. And it will also help, maybe if when they respond, acting CEO, maybe to also highlight to me or to the committee as to how long does it take for you to feel the process that you're taking in as far as filling of the post is concerned. On the issue of stability, instability of the management and the leadership in the SAA as a whole, it's a very, 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 very big concern to all of us. We want to see stability in the company. We want to see stability, because if there's no stability in the company, many other factors are coming in, and we are all affected. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's well known that my view is that the chairperson, Dudu Myeni, is ground zero of the problem at SAA. In my view, she behaves more like a warlord than a chairperson. And for that reason, I would have been delighted if she were present today, but she's not. When the chairperson wrote to the committee last year providing reasons that she would not resign, she pointed out that she serves at the pleasure of the government represented by the shareholder, which is the Minister of Finance. So my question to the Deputy Minister is, would he confirm that the shareholder, in this case the Minister of Finance, opposed the reappointment of Dudu Myeni as chairperson of the board? Would he explain why the Minister of Finance opposed her reappointment? And given that the Minister of Finance opposed her reappointment, can he explain how it was that she has now been reappointed as the chairperson of SAA, which I think the Deputy Minister and most members of the public would agree is not in the best interests of the airline. So that's my first question. My second question is on the issue of cost compression. A key component of cost compression at SAA is, as the finance officer mentioned, is headcount reduction. But if you look at the figures, they are fairly astounding. Between 2010 and 2015, SAA employ 3,442 additional staff members. And if you look at the previous 2 years, SAA only reduced headcount by 15. So my question to the Acting Chief Executive Officer is, how is it possible that SAA employed 3,442 additional staff in a 5-year period when the airline in most of the years under review was making not just losses but significant losses? And why has there been no serious effort on behalf of SAA to reduce headcount and to save on the now 5.68 billion rand wage bill at SAA? Thank you.
Chair, first of all, I just wanted to, first of all, thank the Minister, the Deputy Minister, and the representatives from SAA. Chair, the first question to the Minister is really around the SAA guarantee and the delay thereof. I understand that the Minister is saying they had to exercise fiscal prudence in doing that, but I'm not sure how far does fiscal prudence go, given the fact that we are still without a CEO. And how do you turn around an ailing business around if you do not have the key individual? And does that not constitute fiscal prudence? And secondly, which is a question really that is really to the CEO. CEO, I'm not sure if I agree with you about underplaying the narrative that is in the public discourse by saying it kind of detracts you from focusing on ensuring that the airline is profitable. In the first place, surely that would not be there unless there is something that that is of interest to the public. And again, this is linked to our depth of understanding the international finance space. Because if my calculations are right, and I'll tell you why I'm very concerned about whether SAA actually understand their international finance place in which they play. You know, it is largely about monetary and macroeconomic relations, and you can see that in your own books, although obviously you are not giving that expression. Your period, I think the period from 2011 to 2015, it looks as though because of the currency fluctuations, you've lost almost, if my calculations are correct, about 3 billion. During that period. Now, what is the strategy of managing that? Because it's not okay to just be a victim and cry foul that, no, the rand is weaker, blah, 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 blah. We need to anticipate, you know, these kinds of challenges because we are operating in that space. And obviously, it affects everything. It affects even our core business, which is transporting people around the world. Because if people do not have the money, they're not going to be sending, they won't be filling up our flights. And our cargo, people will probably defer sending whatever cargo that has to go through that or whatever. So I want to understand, what is your strategy in terms of managing this very volatile international finance space? Because obviously it affects you. And I am very interested because, you know, even what is happening in our SOEs does contribute to speculative attacks, you know. Whether we admit that or not, it's neither here nor there, but it does contribute to speculative attacks. Because investors, they look at these speculative risks, whether it's in the paper, as I was saying, which I say it's very important for us to actually take note of what is being said in the media and whatnot, because it does pose a serious speculative risk, which is a major risk factor in this industry that you are operating in. The other question, Chair, that is of concern to me is that, and it's linked to the absence of a permanent CEO. It's the issues around the fact that right now we know that the SAA is not doing that well, is not doing well at all, but it looks as though to me that we are not taking into account what is happening internationally. Most airlines, and in your director's report, you've acknowledged that in most parts of the world, the airlines are liberalizing, they are consolidating, and so forth. But at SAA, we seem to want to come with different results. And yet, we are not necessarily seeing sufficient evidence of what we are doing to liberalize and consolidate, consolidate our business. And therefore, that speaks to your business operating model. Because to me, I'm from Durban, and I know the chair is going to agree with me, let alone the fact that we come from the same town, and, he always tells people he knows me from when I was 15. But both himself and myself. That's why. Okay. But both himself and myself are actually very aggrieved potential passengers of SAA. Some of us, at least he tries to fly Mango. I fly British Airways.
I do, unless I got no choice.
Yeah. The reality, it speaks to this consolidation. And I know that, Minister, previously it has been said, and the DG, it's been said over and over, we need to start consolidating. And I'm not sure what we are doing about that, because the reality is that that particular route between Durban and Cape Town, I'm just making a good example. We are flying British Airways. Yes, it's because British Airways obviously understands they are operating in this highly competitive environment. But I don't see your business model speaking to that. And if you are not going to leverage on the passengers, how else are you going to turn this ailing airline around? And these are some of the issues that are of serious concern to me. The final issue that Chair, I think we need to speak to. I've noticed that there is, when I was doing the analysis of your finance statement, I saw a correlation between the factors, the factors that I've just said, and your operating loss of 1.5 billion in the 2015 financial year, and against 374 million operating loss in the previous year. Now, this is a big gap, guys. It's scary. And I need you to give us comfort as this committee. How are we going to address that specific area? Because if we are not going, this operating loss, obviously, if it's not curtailed, it's going to balloon. And if in the previous year it was 374 billion, and now we are sitting at 1.5 billion, good Lord, we don't know what's going to happen in future. So can you also shed light to that? Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much. And let me also join my colleagues in welcoming the DM and the team from SAA and congratulate the new board that has been appointed. I think members spoke more around the issue of governance and the need for stability, both from the board side and from the management side. The board, we can't say much. They are just 2 weeks old. They're new from the box, but they should know that we would want them to work as coherent as possible. The issue, Chair, that I want to touch on is the issue of financial stability, which the acting CFO also spoke to. When she presented the AFS, she spoke about some of the operational costs being foreign currency denominated, and the 20% exposure that SAA is prone to. And I guess maybe one will be interested in knowing whether even the leasing of aircrafts, in the way that they are leasing them from companies outside South Africa, we not, for lack of a better word, I'm not being xenophobic and I'm not saying companies outside South Africa should not do business, but is it really worth it? And would want to ask the board to really look into that and check whether going forward, will this sustain the institution, and because we want to see the institution not relying on the shareholder for capital injection from time to time. You should be able to run on your own. That's the first thing, Chair. The second issue is that, you know, Chair, from the organization that I come from, which is the ANC, transformation is not a nice to have. We have been given a mandate to transform the economy and change the employment pattern. So it's something that we should see it happening. But if you look at the breakdown of procurement activities that you see in the SAA, 24 billion rand procurement opportunities, 2% only going to black-owned companies. I'm not sure if I want to ask about women-owned companies, youth, disabled, whether 22 years down the line, is SAA really wanting to say, is this a story, a good story that we should tell? I would be interested in knowing, out of those 24 billion rand, the top 5 companies that are benefiting out of this. Same with the employment patterns. And I think, Chair, if you allow me, I mean, they can even bring those breakdowns later in writing. I know we are baptizing the new board with fire. They may not be able to respond on some of these things, but they'll be able to bring that. A breakdown of your employment equity, the plan of training your pilots. Currently, would also want to know how many pilots do you have and who are training them, if there's a training, whatever, the selection of those cadets, the breakdown of salary bill of the pilots and their packs. If we can get some of those things just to be able to see whether there's a transformation path that SAA is moving towards. The last issue, Chair, is towards Treasury, and I'm happy that the DM is here. You know, the announcement by Future Growth some few days ago about our SOEs was a cause for concern for all of us. And we are aware that there are discussions underway, which we don't want to undermine as a committee. But the call we want to make as a committee to Treasury is that what happened to that shareholder management bill? Because if we can start to bring it back, it will assist in us setting up the framework between SOEs and the shareholder and putting in place the shareholders' compact. How you as SOEs and government relate, and how you are able to make sure that there's delivery on some of these things, so that we are not even experiencing what we are experiencing today. Issues of governance, the challenges around how we run our SOEs and so on and so on. So if that shareholder management bill can come and then we are able to deal with it, and all SOEs, you know, coming to the fault in making sure that the shareholders' compact speaks to some of those things, framework is laid, and we are able to deal with this and bring confidence to whoever is interested in investing in our country. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Lees, and whoever else is next, you know the order in which you are, right? It's Mr. Shivambu, and then I don't know the lady's name from Public Enterprises again. What's her name? Yeah. Natasha, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we do welcome the appointment of the new board, but I would hesitate to congratulate them, given the task before them and the warlord kind of leadership they can anticipate. I think we should be commiserating rather than congratulating, but I hope they are successful. Mr. Chairman, through you to the Minister, given what has subsequently been revealed, there can be no doubt that CFO Wolf Mayer was correct in his memo to the board, wherein he pointed out that SAA was technically insolvent and that further trading constituted reckless trading in terms of Section 22 of the Companies Act. Will the Minister appoint a commission of inquiry to determine whether or not Dudu Myeni and some or all of the directors at the time acted in violation of the Companies Act and should be held personally liable? So SAA has been and remains in serious financial trouble and remains in business only on the basis of the some 19 billion rand guarantees from the South African government and the taxpayers. The annual report, as tabled, is not final, and this is illustrated by the sudden changes in figures which have been presented to us this morning. In the preliminary report which we received on the 15th of September, there was a massive 4.67 billion rand loss for the 14-15 year. Suddenly this morning, that loss has now jumped to 5.64 billion, an additional 950 million rand loss. there has been comment about the tight revenue turnover. And I would suggest to you that that is largely, if not wholly, a result of the inoperational operation department that was set up under a certain Mr. Bosch. The purchase of new aircraft from Airbus has been mired in controversy around Dudu Myeni's attempts to introduce African finance into the deal, which was soundly rejected by Airbus. This action by Dudu Myeni, meddling in executive functions and apparently without a mandate from the board, was reckless and brought SAA to the brink of liquidation. Finance Minister Nene was forced to intervene at the 11th hour to try to enforce the agreement with Airbus and save SAA from liquidation. It is clear that this intervention cost him his job a few days later. As if the Airbus debacle was not bad enough, Dudu Myeni then attempted to raise 16 billion to refinance the debt book using so-called boutique financiers, BNP Capital, and then tried to get a bankrupt SAA to pay one-man show BNP a cancellation fee of 49.9 million. As at the 31st of March 2015, SAA had liabilities that exceeded its assets by 8.29 billion. That figure now has increased to 9.24 billion and 10.96 billion as at the end of 2016. The company is bankrupt. There have been an exceptionally high number of senior members of the executive who have been suspended or resigned. These include CEO Kalawe, CCO Bosch, CFO Stimple, CFO Mayer, General Human Resources Mpe. Minister Gordon has asked for the board to review all current suspensions, and yet we are hearing this morning that legal action is being taken against at least one of the suspended. Can we please be told how SAA can take a decision of their own disciplinary committee on review? Can we please explain to us how that is possible? The auditors have raised technical difficulties about the 2014-15 annual report at the 11th hour. We assume that the figures now put before us are the final figures, but we cannot be sure of that until we see the final report with the auditor report included. Madam Deputy Board Chair, will the Board comply with the condition laid down by Minister Gordon in his speech to Parliament on the 13th of September that the Board will review all suspensions of employees to see whether they are justified? And if so, how will such review be conducted independently and impartially? CEO Zwane, I don't envy you your job, and I don't blame you for wanting to go back to your other job if the reports I heard were true, but nevertheless, would you agree that SAA is technically insolvent, and that if it were not for the granting of the latest financial guarantees, SAA would face liquidation? If you disagree, please explain to me why you disagree. Mr. Zwane, I don't see in the report any reference to a forensic investigation undertaken by one Indiebo Consulting into Air Chef's tender irregularities. If it's not there, was such a investigation done, and what are the details? May I please, Mr. Zwane, just reassure us about what the technical details that the auditors raised were, and who are the experts from whom advice has been or is being solicited? Mr. Chairman, the report tabled is a preliminary report. The report can therefore not be relied upon, and there are key elements that are missing. The all-important auditor's report and the financial statements of the subsidiaries as are required by Section 55C of the PFMA. We are pleased that the Minister has agreed that a second meeting be held with SAA. We are concerned that the end of November, or the 20th of November, may be too far into the future, but that can be discussed as you have suggested, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Minister, please can you confirm that when we have that meeting, you've already said the finalized annual reports will be there, but can you confirm that the financial statements for all the subsidiaries will be tabled, that a copy of the shareholder compact will be tabled, that the evaluation of the board conducted by one statute core, as referred to in page 62 of the preliminary report, will be tabled, that the benchmarking exercises referred to on page 54 will be tabled, and that when the 2015-16 at that same meeting are submitted, that with those the subsidiary financial statements will also be included. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Please, I thought you were a nice guy. All right, fine. Floyd, I can't say that off, right?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We, last week, as the Deputy Chairperson of the Board of SAA, last week we tabled an urgent matter of national public importance in Parliament for debate, and it was primarily about the South African Airways. We were concerned that there were two members of board. When we actually raised the issue, there were two members of the board of SAA, and there were reports that the company might face liquidation if urgent interventions are not made in SAA. And then we debated there and made specific observations because a new board had been appointed afterward. They requested for a debate to happen. And we raised specifically our concern about the reappointment of the chairperson, Dudu Myeni, to say that she presided over a largely incompetent board that is reflected in the numbers, some of which were being presented with here. That an incompetent and mostly directionless in terms of some of the commitments that SAA would come and make here in Parliament and couldn't achieve them. And we got assurance from the Minister of Finance that as the new board, you are going to competently turn around SAA. So I get a report that you met on Sunday. Perhaps you must tell us what are you going to do differently to what has been happening for the past 3, 4, 5 years under Dudu Myeni, who misled the board and took senseless decisions on many critical things that relate to the airways. What decisions have you taken? Because we're sitting now with a team of actors in the executive. Everyone who seems to be acting. It's a drama. Or it's a soapy, or it's Isibai, or generations where acting CEO, acting CFO, acting general manager for human resources, acting everything. There is no one who is appointed into that position of responsibility that are very important. Makosi says it in English that they've got fiduciary responsibilities and they must be prudent when they deal with the finances and all those things. Then they have to be given the full-time responsibilities, but they are almost all of them acting. What are you going to do about that, and what are your time frames? That is the board. So the Minister of Finance spoke on your behalf, so you must speak on your behalf now. You're at the meeting. When are you going to appoint non-actors into the positions of executive in SAA so that there is a clearly defined turnaround strategy and plan for SAA? I'm very suspicious of this acting CEO of SAA because in the last meeting where he appeared as an acting CEO, he exuberantly said, no, we're going to turn around the issue of the diversification of the suppliers base of SAA. And he made a commitment there, a very brave commitment, that within a few months would have dealt with the 30% achievement, 30% of suppliers of SAA. And I said to him then that, why do you make such commitments? We had a meeting in G026. We made lots of commitments about diversification of the supply base of SAA. I think you must account on that, on what exactly happened, what has been done since the last meeting. The answer will reveal those, unless if it's a different actor as well, because there have been so many acting after acting after acting in SAA. We must be given. And I even get worried when he says here now that he is distracted by the media. That is why there are problems in SAA. What kind of an executive is that who says, I'm distracted by the media? So you read the newspaper and then you don't do your job. Or you watch news that SAA is not doing well and then you neglect your work because of media. And then we must take such an individual serious.
I don't think he literally meant that. You're being surrealistic.
So because he said that he's distracted by the media and it must be, maybe he must respond for himself, he must defend himself. And I think that one of the things which the board must be aware is that you must also assess the competence of these actors that are in SAA now. That is the urgent thing that you must have to attend to. Because if we had a competent executive in SAA, even with the madness of Dudu Myeni, some of the calamities that came to define SAA would have been avoided and prevented, because she, with evidence, tries to interfere with procurement processes, wants to line up her friends and family members to benefit out of the procurement processes of SAA. She gives instructions that are not legal in terms of what should happen on the procurement processes. And that is one of the things that you must be fully aware of as the new board, and then develop a plan that you might be, if you for some reason think that you're inheriting an entity with competent management, you might be misleading yourself. You must look into that closely, into some of the management decisions that had been taken, because if people do illegal things, they can't justify it on wrong instructions. People are falling today because of taking wrong instructions in NPA and everywhere else. So you must look into that. I'm working on the basis that we're given an assurance that you are a competent board, Mr. Tise. We're told that, Mr. Malulek, we're told that you are competent, Ms. Trifosa Ramano. They told us that you are very competent. So what are you going to do differently to? And then maybe management must appraise us. I'm sure the board will not be aware of the exact details of the deal that he had with BNP Capital. What were the agreements? What was the scope of work that it was given? And what has it done thus far? And what was the causes of the cancellation of the contract that they were given to perform the functions that they had performed? I just need appraisal. I don't have a view about it. We'll then possibly formulate a perspective once you have appraised us. Thank you.
Who's next, whoever is. Can I just, Advocate, ask you, is it appropriate to say that somebody's mad or not? I don't know. Mr. Myeni, don't complicate life here, right? Let's deal with the issue. Mr. Myeni, and I don't make life difficult here, man. I'm chairing, man. Please, let's deal with the substance. I know what he's trying to say, but I have to do my job as a chair, Floyd, and it gives me no pleasure to have to do all this. Let me tell you. Now, Advocate Jenkins, guide me. Can you say that somebody's mad?
Chairperson, you can, I said the madness of the decisions. We have never spoken about the
madness of the decisions.
The madness of the
Fine.
decisions,
Okay.
the insanity.
Okay, that's fine. I withdraw it. If he said madness of the decision, some of you may not like it, but that's tough. Okay. If he says her madness, that's different. So what did he say, Advocate Jenkins, and is it appropriate? I'm not the Speaker of the House. We're going to be productive here. You ask them 1,000,001 questions. Now, don't complicate life. Advocate Jenkins, is what he said, whatever it is he said, appropriate or not? And why?
Chair, I can only answer whether it's parliamentary or not. I don't see a problem with the speech as unparliamentary. But whether it's appropriate, that's
no, that's different.
That's fine,
yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Thanks,
you
Chair.
get what I'm trying to say. Fine. Next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, can I start off by saying I think it's completely unacceptable that 18 months after the year end, we're still sitting with draft financial statements. We should be looking at the 2016, which are also now in arrears. And specifically when there is no audit report, and I'm going to make some comments now, which I believe that the audit report will be qualified for 2015, purely on the basis that we're into the new financial year, and any guarantees now issued are after 12 months, and a going concern review is always 12 months into the future. So I think the auditors had an obligation to issue an audit report after commencing an audit within a reasonable period of time. But whether it's qualified or not, officially in the end, it's clear that these sets of financial statements were, for all practical reasons, qualified. And I also think that they do not comply with IFRS. And I'm going to point out to you why they do not, in two material respects right now. But before I get there, I want to ask some clarifying questions for your next report. It's clear if you also look at these financials and the cash flow statements that not only is it technically insolvent, it's also commercially insolvent. If it weren't for the how should we say, the monopolistic position you have, you would not be still trading today. And I think it was also bear in mind that when you've got 18 months and your financial statements aren't correct, it's a serious issue. A Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed company has 3 months to issue audited financial statements. So this situation that you can just drag things out on and on is completely unacceptable, and I cannot even understand it's been allowed to happen for so long. And that being said, I think the Treasury's stance to put in things in place before issuing this guarantee, which they were almost forced to do, it's like you've got them over a barrel with their arms behind their back. We've got really very little choice to do this. So the fact that they have taken a hard line to make sure that you put into place certain things is actually quite commendable from their point of view. However, in this whole plan of yours, I see no plan on fuel. Now, in an airline, there's 2 things. I think you guys know this: fuel and maintenance costs, besides the capital commitments that make or break an airline. And both of those are basically out of control in the 2015 year. 36% of the total revenue represents your fuel bill. What are you going to do about that? And linked to that, the decision to buy narrow-bodied planes, what was the rationale for that back then? Well, I would presume it was because of fuel conservation or something to that effect. And why has that not come through if that is the case? If you read in your director's notes, you say our maintenance costs went up by 31.58%. You take out the forex increases, it's 17%. On new planes, you shouldn't be seeing an increase in maintenance. You should be seeing a decrease in maintenance. That's the very reason for buying a new fleet. So there's something seriously wrong in the maintenance department, if you look at it from a financial point of view. Now, to understand this better, I was looking for some things. I was looking for a split of revenue between foreign, regional, and local. I was looking at the split on landing fees. I was looking for some other splits, which I would normally find in a segment report. There's no segment report in these financial statements. And a company like this group has to have a segment report. It's in terms of IFRS. So that's a fundamental flaw in these financial statements, and I hope we see that in the final versions. Secondly, SAA is always in the press for good reason. So if you want to stay out the press, you must do the right things. That means get financials out in time, etc., and not be litigating all the time. If you look at these financial statements is the second reason why I believe these financials don't comply with IFRS. There's nothing about the contingent liabilities or the litigation that the airline is involved in. And that's a material shortfall in these financial statements. Also, I think the note on page 127, note 44, I think it is, on going concern, is incorrect, because the directors are saying there that they think it's a going concern. It obviously isn't a going concern in these financial statements, so you better correct those before you sign off. And then also, what about the training costs? That's the next very important thing in an airline. The training costs are extremely high. I don't know what the split is or how much we're spending on training. And can you comment on the fact that I'm hearing a lot of poaching? Well, it's not poaching, it's career choices. That a lot of these very expensive trained pilots are definitely vacating the employment of SA. Is that a fallacy, or is that a fact? Because then we're losing this money. We're spending a high amount on training, and because of the work environment, our pilots are leaving. And so just also going back to the maintenance, if you look at that in the financial statements, there's 3.6 billion in 2015 and 2.2 billion on acquisition. You know, just this is not an old fleet, this is a new fleet. So there's definitely something not right there. And on the impairment costs, you mentioned there's a lot of impairment. It was 1.8 billion and 1.6 billion, if I remember correct. We must remember that that is as a pure result of the bad decision made by the board. I mean, that's effectively putting this into normal terms. You go to the BMW and say, please order me that 3 Series, and when you get it, because of the way you structure the deal, it costs twice the amount of a BMW next to it. And specifically, it's exasperated by the fact that we had a rand-dollar depreciation in this period. Now, when you impair, you have to take into account that as well. And an aircraft is always denominated in dollars. So the fact that we're impairing to such an extent in a market where the dollar went the other direction, it's telling you that because that plane is now an asset, the fact that you didn't pay for it with a new rate, you paid for it with the old rate, effectively. So the impairment was much greater. So, and the impairment is in the 2014 and the 2015 year. Whoever made those decisions, and it's long before my time, really was extremely negligent. And if ever there was fruitless or wasteful expenditure, it was that decision taken back there. And there should be, on the board, some recourse taken. I mean, you are subject to the Public Finance Management Act, and if decisions taken by officials was to the extent that definitely fruitless and wasteful, you have to recover this money from those persons. So it would be interesting to hear what the current boards, have they made an assessment on that, and are they going to take any action steps in that regard, Mr. Chair? Thank you.
Thandi?
Is there right to voice any discontent?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me welcome the new board. I say Brapita Maluleke. You know, he used to be here with us. Now he's on the other side. So, Chair, I was caught at the gate for 30 minutes, so I'm sorry.
Recognize you're an MP? Because you're looking so young, I'm not surprised.
I was driving a different car.
They didn't recognize you?
I was driving a different car.
Oh, so that's the committee's fault, all right. Sorry, I have to needle something.
Chair,
I've been very quiet today, Thandi.
You are eating out on my
Since you came in last, you're the victim.
You're eating out on my
See,
needle.
Natasha, I don't know her. Otherwise, I'll needle her and she'll get mad and walk out and then there'll be a huge press conference there. You can't do that.
No. Natasha will learn to understand that this committee is a very hard-working committee. It's not about TV. You see, it's a different one altogether. Yeah. Okay, Chair. First, let me say this up front. We're discussing a very complex matter at a very complex time. You see, we're discussing the state of a state-owned company. Now, when you look at a state-owned company, I would have liked to speak about the formulation of the state-owned companies as way back as 1940, what informed that decision. I would have loved to have time to start there, but I don't have the luxury of time to even try to project how, when your IDCs, your ISCO, your ESCOM, at that time I think it was called EFCOM, were giving large amounts of money to operate on behalf of government. And I would have liked to just juxtapose that with the role of SOEs in a developmental state, so that we bring in the context when we're discussing the challenges that is faced by an SOE. We juxtapose it with the role, Deputy Chairperson of the board, that this specific state-owned company should be playing. And I'm going to take you a little bit back. I'm going to quote what the President said on the 17th of June 2014 in the State of the Nation, in this fifth Parliament, when he opened the fifth Parliament. Allow me just to take you on a few things he said. The President said that there is a need for government to increase the level of investment. And he further went to specifically speak on the need for a radical transformation agenda, both in the energy sector and in the SOEs. And he mentioned ESCOM, and he mentioned SAA. And he said these sectors need to adapt to the redefined roles to achieve these targets. Now, I'm saying this because the minister, when he was here last year in November, the deputy minister, the same deputy minister was there in the meeting today, which I hope to see again next year, you see, because an element of consistency is very important for us to achieve some of the things we do. He tabled a 90-day action plan as part of the turnaround strategy for SAA, right? And that 90-day plan, had it been implemented, we will not be sitting here today speaking in parables like we do now, Chairperson. It was very clear what needed to be done. And I don't want to bore the meeting by taking you through that 90-day plan, but I'll just mention a few things that he said will fix the problems. One of them was the implementation of the LTTS. Now the question is the LTTS implemented? Okay? The year-to-date financial performance. Now, in the corporate environment, there's no way that you will not show us your year financial performance, and yet you want us to consider the weaknesses that you have. Okay? It cannot be like that. In the corporate world, we look at your financial year performance, and that financial year performance determines your ability to continue to lead. Marcos, you were there. If you are not performing well in a bank, you are removed. It's simple as ABC, right? Because you didn't achieve your performance targets. So maybe at some point you need to look at these performance contracts and the key performance indicators that institutions have, and say you have performed, and if you have performed, we appraise you. If you did not, we say thank you very much, goodbye, let's look for somebody else who's prepared to perform. Now, we also looked at
sense they are students, they are people not from
The next milestone.
There may well be a few that...
Now here we are in a very competitive environment. We have no choice but to be innovative.
Others perhaps have just come
We won't complain forever about British Airways taking our routes. It's about how we're going to be flexible enough to be able to take what belongs to us.
well, strength to their arm, provided that arm...
If we need to establish new routes, then that's the case. If we need to review the routes, that's another story. The thing that we cannot sit here and do as this committee is to tell you whether you must get rid of the sub-deal, buy narrow buses, or do that. Because if you fail, you'll say the committee is the actual responsible authority that has given you the mandate in a specific. So there should be a very clear line of separation of powers in relation to what we can tell you to do and what we cannot tell you to do. But the observations we've made, and I'm speaking here on behalf of the committee because it's the observation we made, all of us. The importance to separate management from operational activities is very important. And I'm saying to the new board now, I try to look at your CVs. None of you has expertise in the aviation sector. Therefore, you can't take a role of management. You should not even attempt to do that. Because that's when the problem starts. When you play a role of a manager, when you actually are the board that needs to oversee the role of this, and we will not be able to keep them to account if you take that responsibility. Chair, whether the financial statements have a split in terms of revenue and on lending fees and contingent liabilities, it's a matter that we will deal with when it comes. Because at no point we will not look into the deeper nitty-gritties of what is contained in the financial statements. Because that's where the operation lies. At one point, the committee will need to know what is the contingent liabilities of SAA, how much have you spent on lending fees, and all other revenue-related matters. I also want to make a suggestion, Honourable Chair. It's very important for SAA to consider the role that National Treasury plays. National Treasury has been given this responsibility by Cabinet to oversee the role of SAA. Therefore, at any point where it feels that the type of decision that has been taken is not going to assist our GDP growth, we should take that into consideration. It's not like it should never be a contested terrain. Pinky spoke about a very important element, your transformation agenda. We spoke about the cadet program last year. We need to see transformation taking place. We need to see young pilots being trained, black in particular, and women, to be specific. I'm not worried whether you will get a qualified audit report. As long as that report will show the developmental agenda that you have undertaken, then I'm not worried. But I will be worried if there's fiddling of the board in the management decisions that makes the organization to be afloat. I'll be worried when the board takes decisions that are not economical about your investment patterns. So, Chair, when we come back to look at the details, we are not naive not to recognize the fact that oil in this country has been fluctuating. We have had challenges on that, so it will affect the reserves that will be there in the country and that SAA will be utilizing in this space. And Chair, I want to make this suggestion. Maybe we need to meet SAA on a quarterly basis. I know it's a little bit cumbersome, but the state at which this important SOE is at, of course, with all the interested parties. Let me tell you this, what I said in my speech, in the debate, is that, you see, the whole debate is not about only your performance. It's about the stakes, you see. People want, those who are interested in investment in the aviation sector, want to see you failing because they want to play into that space. So you'll be giving them all the ammunition. It happens with ESCOM. They want the distribution to be given to private hands. And we said as government, if you look at the Interministerial Committee report, we said both the private sector and government should play a meaningful role in the investments of South Africa. We will not privatize. We have not yet arrived at a point as this government to privatize. So it's a given fact that the stakes are very high. But that doesn't mean the board and the management must play into the hands of those who are interested. We shouldn't behave as if the private sector does not want you to divest.
Oh, you want? Just throw me the mic. It's going to be live. Well, we'll send it straight to the office so that they've got it.
Chair, when the Deputy Minister comes next time, I hope he will still be here. I need him to tell us what is the relationship between the board and management, if I'm still here myself.
Why can't he get promoted? Why can't he become a minister?
If I'm still here myself.
Seem to know something
you should
I
ask
don't
about
know.
yourself, not about him.
You know, I'll not want a sharp mind like him to go, including the DG, you know. I'll find myself in a very difficult space if that happens. Yes, please. You know. So, we will, when we consider those financial statements that are so deep, I don't like to do it in a mass meeting, you know. It's not assisting. Because when I do that, I don't put makeup, I do my work, I take my shoes off, and it's the space where we work, you know. Chair,
okay, well, you know what?
I want us to also ask our colleagues to desist at looking at challenges of the SAA only to an individual. Of course, in the past there was no board, everybody resigned, so we can take that excuse, but now we've got a full board. So when we come back, you see, Honorable Liz, I respect you a lot, but if you use a word like warlord, you know, some of us knows what the warlords are, you know, in a real sense. And I take exception if you can reduce an individual, especially a woman, to a warlord. If I can mention warlords that I know in the African continent, I can mention people like Jonas Savimbi, Sania Bacha, and so on. Those were warlords. Well, in your province there was Sifiso Nkabinde. Now you cannot be able to come here in this meeting today and speak that language. We might be having a difficult chairperson of the board, of course. We have not been able to get the answers we wanted in the manner in which we wanted them. But reducing her to a warlord, it's a bit heavy. It's a bit heavy. So I take it, no, David, me and you are together here every day. I might agree with some of the issues that you have raised. We do. As the ANC has taken this board, by the way, to account, right? But we wanted a balance. You can't leave out the transformation agenda that this company should implement, given the challenges of a very sharp learning curve, Honorable Chair. But there cannot be an excuse where we need capacity and management. That one we cannot have excuses for. And the turnover of CFOs, CEOs, blah, 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 it's an issue that we're not going to sit here and talk about on a daily basis, Deputy Minister. We will not want to see a situation like that. But we are not apologetic about the transformation agenda. And the policy of this government is very clear. We are not yet at a position where we'll privatize. The report of the Interministerial Committee will also guide us for moving forward as presented by the Deputy President. So, Chair, let me leave it to that and get those matters that I have raised to be answered on, especially matters that were raised by the Deputy Minister about the 90-day plan and all the matters that related to that. equity targets, competition on the open skies, all of that. It's very important. I know the board is still new. If they cannot answer them today, it's fine. It will be homework that when we meet again, as I suggested, that we should meet on a quarterly basis. I know it's going to be very difficult for the chair to have them here all the time, but to follow on those issues and leave out the side issues of television, newspapers, because we cannot. And that's why I agree with Floyd. We cannot say the media is destructive us from doing our work. I mean, it cannot never be acceptable. We should focus on our work, irrespective of the negative reporting we get. We do our work. We will support you. Where we believe that you are doing the right thing, we'll be behind you. And when we believe that you are not doing the right thing, we'll be honest enough to say it, like we said it in the November meeting. Chair, let me stop there. I'll come back if there's a matter that I've left out. Thank you.
I don't know when you'll come back. Certainly not today. Right now, Natasha, do you have to speak? You want to privatize SAA? I know that through the media. What else?
Chair, thank you very much. Chair, you might ask me to leave after this. Never mind, ask me to stay until 5. Chairperson, I just want to discuss a little bit while we have the Deputy Minister here as well as the new board, and especially the CEO, where we stand at the moment with looking at gaining equity partners with SAA. Because, Chair, you're quick to jump down my throat for calling privatisation, but privatisation, as we know, is not a one-size-fits-all kind of program. And there are many options of privatisation which we need to look at. And we need to look at global trends, and this is not something we need to reinvent the wheel with. There are companies that have been in similar situations to ours that have turned themselves around very successfully by bringing in equity partners. And Chair, I think, I don't need to repeat myself. What happened with the Emirates deal at the time, I called it for what I remain firmly in my belief that it was, which was economic sabotage. And I think that it is a very bad show that a state-owned entity, and more than that, the chairperson of a state-owned entity could have the kind of power to bring an entire economy to its knees. And I don't think we should ever forget that months and months of negotiation went into what could have been a very lucrative deal, bringing South African Airways into the economic field at a time that it was most necessary, and giving us an economic injection of over 2 billion rand. We still don't have answers as to what happened on the infamous night in Paris, as it's now known. But what we do know is that we now remain in a situation where it's going to be very difficult for us to build up a trust relationship with an equity partner. So I'd like to know where we stand with that, Chair. And Chair, sometimes one has to look at why we're in the media all the time, and the answer is quite simple, and it's an unfortunate one. And that is because recent events at SAA have read like a soap opera. And it's not a good soap opera. It's a scary soap opera. Chair, I'd like to know from the CEO where we stand at the moment with regards to the Pilots Association. Now, we know that last year the Pilots Association brought a motion of no confidence in the board. And notably, almost straight after this motion of no confidence was brought in the board, allegations were levelled against pilots, very senior pilots, all of which, to my knowledge, the pilots have been cleared, yet no public statement has been made by the board. These are men and women who have served our country and our company with distinction. We are talking about decades of service. And I noted, and I was very pleased that the CEO started his address very much in the same vein as I spoke in Parliament last week, where I thanked the pilots at SAA, who are our pride at the moment in an institution that we don't have much pride left in. They are our shining beacon at the moment, and it's thanks to those men and women that our airline remains in the air. And I'll tell you something, when an airline is in the economic turmoil that SAA is in now, people are terrified to fly an airline. But I'll tell you why I'm not terrified to fly SAA. Because I know, and I have full confidence, that not one pilot or co-pilot will ever put my life or the life of any South Africans in danger via flying an aeroplane that they are not 100% sure is safe to be in the air. And I think we should be incredibly proud of that fact. And that's why I think when our pilot's good name is brought into disrepute, we need to make sure that their names are publicly cleared. And I'd like to know why we're very quick to bring a report against the pilots, but subsequently we are very slow to bring a clearing report against the same pilots. Chair, I've heard a lot about, in our conversations today, about the US rand dollar fluctuation and why it's causing such a huge, having such a huge influence in the losses at SAA. I think we must also remember one thing, is that airlines across the world have actually shown an unprecedented growth in income because of the drop in fuel prices. So what I'd like to know is, and perhaps it's not at hand and we'll have to get this kind of information in our next meeting, but exactly how much of our revenue was received in US dollars? Because, you know, I'm looking at a 35 to 40% income in US dollars, and I'd like to know exactly how that influenced the outcome of our statements. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, can I just draw attention of the members to this, that we have asked questions for close to 1 hour and 10 minutes. And so you'll have to guide me on how we structure the discussion today and henceforth. Also, a member did ask to speak again, and I said no, because if I open the floodgates, it's going to mean Thandi had stopped. Also, I think members need to be reminded that Chair also has a right to ask questions. When am I going to ask them? Also, I want to point out that we in this committee take the view that when the researcher, in this case Antonio Manamela, spends hours preparing a report, members can't just ignore it. It's not fair. But because of the limited time, Antonio, I was going to go through the questions you've got.
Well, Kathy,
because everybody's got a copy. I want to table this for you. Let me remind those who don't know that the questions are raised by an independent researcher. And therefore, they do not necessarily reflect the questions that the MPs have. But she's speaking for the research unit, and she has the right to ask these questions. Otherwise, she wouldn't be appointed to serve this committee. So those questions that she has put that haven't already been raised, some overlap, some actually repeat what she says, but there are many questions she's asked that are not actually, and this committee has taken a decision that where possible, we should email this report of the researcher to an entity or a department before they come. So when they come and present their slide presentation, that actually they also respond to the questions, it saves time. Now, unfortunately, because Antonia was sick and we only got this AFS late on Wednesday, she wasn't able to meet the deadline of Thursday morning. But she didn't deliver. I've been exchanged with her over the weekend, even while she's fluish and whatever else. And thank you, Antonia, for this. So this report is being tabled by myself on behalf of the committee. And when you reply in written form and subsequently when you hear again, you will no doubt take her questions into account. Antonia's noted all the questions. Ideally, if I was the chairperson in a normal situation, I'll try to cluster the questions for you, DM, Ms. Romano. I would cluster it and say, focus on these issues. But there were so many, and in such a wide range, that for me to try to cluster them is going to waste time. What I do want to say, colleagues, Exena Check is the board chair here. I thought it'd say, yeah, welcome. We understand you have to go to the doctor, but you're here, you'll catch up from your colleagues. Just to say, look, firstly, that I think there may be, I haven't thought it through, and it's not because Natasha said what she said, but I think it may be true to suggest that a national airline should be a source of pride to its people. In the way, for example, without being gender insensitive, the football team would be. Yeah, you might want to, okay, both the football teams would be. A sense of pride. You should feel a sense of identity with your country through an airline. And this is a national airline. It's a state-owned airline. And I get the sense, even from the majority party here, that we don't feel a sense of pride in SAA. And that is something that we should all work collectively towards. Now, it's true to say, you see, we must be also fair. It is both the board and the ministry, in this case it's the finance ministry for now, that's answerable to Parliament. And if a board and a management of an entity are not working, it is both the department concerned, the shareholder department concerned, and the entity that must account to Parliament. But you see, we can't all say the department's failing, the board's failing, the management's failing, and not ask what is it we are doing as Parliament. It is our collective responsibility as Parliament, as the executive and the SAA, but more, the trade unions and other stakeholders involved in the state-owned entity concerned. So that SAA is not working is ultimately, in the last instance, a reflection on all of us. Now, board chair and acting CEO and board deputy chair, I think that I agree with Floyd Shivambu. It's a question you'll have to answer, and we should give you the time to do so. What is it that this board is going to do differently from other boards? I think that's a fair question to ask, actually. And I think that is a question that you should come to us in November to answer. What is it that you will do differently? I also don't think it's fair to reduce all the ails of SAA, as many as they are. Look, I think you raised very good questions, actually. In fact, some of the style and the tone is unnecessary, but there's not a single question you asked that I can think that is not of value. But I want to come back to my point. We don't just pose questions, comrades, colleagues. We also offer answers. Now, we're not aviation experts. In fact, this really is the view of the committee, unless it's changed its mind. As soon as possible, DM, we want you to exit SAA from Treasury. It must go to where it belongs, which is the Department of Public Enterprises. So basically, I also agree with Thandi. We should meet once a quarter at least. I also agree with her that we can't sit here and ask, how many questions did we ask, Antonio? Probably about close to 100. How are they expected to reply? So I want comrades and colleagues to guide me. So I want to say a few things very quickly, right, that strike me. The one is, I think members must also seek, especially people like Natasha and Dipo and so on, who are in that committee, who understand the aviation industry better than people like myself do and others here, on some of the structure. You see, we can't look only at the board and only at the department. We have to have some keener sense of the structure of the aviation industry, domestically and globally. I read yesterday that Arab Emirates is losing, and so is British Airways, for what it's worth, 3.3% revenue last financial year. Right? Now, you look at it, right? There are questions asked here, but what we're not saying is, this. See, we thought, to be fair, DM to us, we were hoping that, frankly, it's a headache to have it here. We've got enough to do. We've got 6 bills with 380 plus pages. And tax bills are extremely challenging, let me remind you. We've got SARS being challenged. We've got the Financial Services Board being challenged. We can do without SAA. So I remain of the view that we should work fast and effectively and move SAA back to public enterprises. Natasha will be happier, right? Now, the thing is, we must clarify a few things first before we start opening it up. One, this is an interim annual financial statement. So therefore, it was never meant to be complete. And I think the many questions that Mr. Topham raises are correct, actually. And you raised it. It's overlapping. What Thandi and Mr. Topham raised are correct. This is a very interim. In fact, it's because we pushed for it, you'll recall, DM. Remember, we said, we don't care. You are coming here on the 20th, whatever. So we must take some responsibility for this. But we are very pleased, DM, to hear that the board met and has now given more flesh to the 2014-2015 report, the 2015-20. You tell us they'll be available in some sort of published form in the next 48 hours and so on. Let's say by next Friday. Could you table it? So we'll hold you to account. You say you can do it by then. Right. Then Antonio and others will do the work, right? I think this afternoon we can bring the meeting forward. I don't think there's a problem. There are too many questions to ask, and I set it for the last Friday. There was no conspiracy there. I thought it gives the new board, Ms. Romano, and others who are new, Peter, time to prepare. And it's based around Floyd's question. What are you going to do differently? And I think that's the key theme around which we should peg your input. So I know you compared the 2014-15 to 2015-16 reports. But the 2015-16 report is not before this committee. It's presumably not even gone through the PFMA process. We can't check the veracity of it. But there's no harm in comparing the two reports, particularly if it's presenting a more positive light. We can't judge it yet because we don't have it. And so we will make a better sense of what you're saying and a more accurate assessment next week, Friday, thereafter, right? Then on the issue of the structural issues, I think we need some discussion around that, DM. Maybe we bring in Public Enterprises Committee and or the Minister or DM from there and so on. So I want to also say a few things about the way forward, but before I do, henceforth, I'll do it in a summary for 5 minutes if you give me that time. But let me say, can somebody help you? How should we cluster the issues? What I would like to suggest is you deal with the issues around. And if somebody wants to present some other proposals, feel free. Because I must confess, I don't know how to pull this together. And I wasn't making literal notes. There was such a string of questions, all of which I think were valuable. So if members want to help, please do. Antonia, that's partly your job. Can you help me structure the discussion? We have got 50 minutes left, right? 45 really, because I'll need to decide collectively with you how we go forward. What I suggest we deal with is, we don't look at the 2015-2016 report, and we don't question it vigorously because we don't have it. So that may be a way out. So that's done. We recognize that you say that there's been improvements. Good. We will see whether it's the case when the time comes. What I suggest we do is we look at the turnaround, we look at where the board is at the moment, as new as you are. What's your feeling about some of the issues we're raising? Isolate the issues that you think are useful to you. Then answer some of the questions around how you're going to ensure that Mr. Topham and Tandi's questions are addressed in your published annual financial statement and annual report. And then can you give us, I don't know, Advocate Jenkins, I think we can. Can members think about this? We must give you a deadline that you must appoint the CEO and CFO and so on by a certain time or reasonably soon thereafter. Can members think about that? What I think we should seek to do is get some broad sense of where you are going, answer some specific questions related to ensuring that your report that comes to us, your final reports, both years, are filling in the gaps. And also, can we set some deadlines already for you and be clearer about what exactly we expect from you when we meet you again? We will let you know the date by this afternoon. Can somebody help? How else can we, and can we give you some latitude, DM, starting with you, to answer some of the questions and so on. You can pick up. But Thandi, you're going to help to facilitate the process from now. No new issues, because then Mr. Myeni is going to jump down my throat. Yeah. How do we manage this meeting for the next 40 minutes or so?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think we're on the right track. They don't have to answer all the questions here, because some will need more intense response. I think they can go and consider them. But there's one issue that we have not said, all of us in this meeting, that should be there. It's the cost compression strategy that still needs to come, that must be part of the report when it comes back. So yeah, maybe the immediate questions that are in the public discourse can be responded to.
Yeah, okay.
And then the rest that will speak to the financials and other technical matters. Answers can come at a later stage when we do. Yeah, I don't know if I'm helpful.
No, you're being helpful. Mr. Myeni, Sifiso.
Chair, I understand that you need to manage the time and that there does need to be some latitude, provided that latitude does not allow the Deputy Minister to skirt the burning issue, which is the appointment of Dudu Myeni, which is not in the interests of the airline.
No, but you've already raised that question umpteen times. I'm not sure that I agree with him, but fine, if you want to respond to it. Yes, Sifiso. She's there for a year. The cabinet took the decision. What is the DM supposed to do? He's not even in that cabinet. But anyway, fine.
Chair, if I were to assist with the clustering of questions, yeah. I think there are questions which relate to shareholder. There are shareholder issues that have been raised. There are governance issues which relate to the board. There are management issues, there are financial statements analysis issues, and then there are transformative issues that were raised. I think, broadly speaking.
Yeah, no, I had thought of that sort of thing, but you see, each of them's got, each of them, sorry, can you help? Yeah, I had thought of that sort of thing, except that it's so many questions each, but I see your point. That's useful. Floyd, you want to say something?
There are questions that have been asked. Can those who are supposed to respond to the questions do so now?
I'm saying no, it's not possible. It's 100+ questions. We have to guide
Let
the
them
meeting.
respond, and if there are issues that are outstanding, then they will then decide.
Well, that's not the way we structure our meetings.
Let's allow them to respond.
Fine, they will respond, but I am guiding
now.
this meeting as I'm supposed to, as we always do, Floyd. You'll have to just accept that for now. Right, so here it is. Over to you. You've got the drift. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just deal with some of those, a few issues that have been raised, and then probably allow the board to say one or two things on the questions, and then management. But I'll also request that we have documented the questions. I'll also propose that we send you written responses on all of them ultimately after the meeting, so that we've covered everything that has been said. Can I start off by saying one thing? You know, one of the problems and challenges sometimes we face with state-owned entities is the overload of objectives, and with objectives basically. You have hundreds and hundreds of objectives. Every time there's a discussion, we load another and add another objective to them, etc. And I think we've taken a view that the current challenge that SAA faces is financial sustainability. And the mandate, the immediate responsibility of the board, the way we see it, is bringing the airline back to solvency. Now, there are a number of things that need to happen there that assist in that objective. And I dare say that we must desist from what we normally do, confuse the levels of priorities. All these things are important. But at the present moment, if we fail to bring back the airline to solvency, we would have failed the country, quite frankly. So that's our view as Treasury. The second point, coming back to the issue of the equity partner, because it has been raised, and whether you call it privatization, whatever you want to call it, we've taken a view that it's going to be, ultimately it's going to be line that government had said, we will look at private equity and looking at private equity as government. But the stance that we've taken is that we must first ensure that we improve the financial position of the airline, stabilize it and improve its financial position, and also look at the strategy and ensure that we have a strong and solid strategy for the airline. And if we look at all possibilities to bring it back to solvency, once we're sure about that, governance is strengthened and all these things, then we can start looking at private equity as a possibility, or private participation in the airline. So we're not, in principle, opposed to that. And it has been stated over and over in government. It's contained in the presidential review report, and we still, as Treasury at least, committed to that. And I know that Cabinet supports that view. So there's no debate about that. For us, it's a question of what do you begin with. Our view, if you got into a debate now or a process of finding a mechanism of private participation now, you probably will have a disaster, actually, rather than solve problem. And we're not looking at this thing of private participation ideologically. It's not a matter, it's a matter of being pragmatic. I mean, if you have to reduce the fiscal burden on the state, this is one of the options that we have to look at. It has nothing to do with any ideological position, etc. So that's the first point first point that I wanted to make. The second point relates to this thing of the board. Honorable Menir, we have a board. And I mean, this almost takes us away from the core business of what we're supposed to be focusing on, that the harping on the individual, how the individual was appointed and how the board was appointed. There's been a process, different iterations in that process that culminated in consultation in cabinet and engagement with the cabinet, and collectively out of that we have the board that we have. From Treasury's position, and I dare say that government, broadly speaking, we're satisfied that we have the necessary skills to take the airline forward. We've got strong financial skills, we've got strong strategic capabilities here, we've got people here who have run big organizations, big companies in the private sector, we have people here who have in-depth knowledge of the operations of the airline. And we think that with that collective, all those collective skills can take the airline forward. So I'm just...
What about an aviation expert? Do you have one?
We are looking at that. That's an issue that we're looking at. At the moment, we're soliciting a number of inputs from private sector, etc., around supporting that weakness. But generally speaking...
The committee agree that we would like you to look at what you have and ensure that reasonably soon you appoint somebody with a technical understanding of the aviation industry. Anybody opposed to that? No, good, right, we want it done. I don't know, Advocate Jenkins, you'll guide me out to what we can do. In fact, literally write to them. We raised this with you before, you'll recall, last November and earlier. I don't think we need to discuss this. I will find out from you, Advocate Jenkins, how I couch the letter. I'll draft it, you look at it. We're saying to you, we want at least one person there with experience of the aviation industry.
So we're really persuading members of the committee that allow us and allow the board to focus on what it's supposed to do. Give it a chance to test itself in doing what we have given them as a task, rather than to be harping on individuals and how they are appointed, etc. We think that we've reached a point where we have a good board. In the next year, from now until the end of the next year, Ms. Myeni is the chairperson of the board, and Triforsa is the deputy, and we've set up the committees of the board. We think that we're poised for greater impact on the airline, and allow that to happen, quite frankly. The second point is around the executive appointment of executives.
Chair, with respect, that is not a reply to my question.
Let him, you see, I am picking up, as the chair, I have a right to do this. It's my job. Picking up on things we've raised before. That's why I intervene. I notice Makosi had a hand up. Since he blurted out what he wanted to say, you have the right to blurt out what you want to say. You have the right to do it.
No, Chair, I'm preempting what the Minister is going to say. I really want him to speak on the absence of stability at top management level, because that speaks to solvency issues.
Absolutely correct. No, you are absolutely correct. Raised it anyway.
I've just been stopped, Chair. Can I go through all the answers? The second point
Floyd,
is around...
you said let them answer. Can you persuade your colleagues not to intervene? I have the right to intervene on things we've agreed on. Thank you.
The second point, of course, relates to the executives. I mean, we've given we understand, we share the view ourselves. That's why it's part of the immediate tasks that the board must embark on, appointing executive management from the CEO, CFO. We've given that as an immediate responsibility.
The right to you on a deadline on that matter. Thank you very much.
Okay. So because we see that as important, it's a very serious risk if we don't address that issue. There was an issue about the loan, and I'm not the one to answer that, but I think from where we're sitting, our responsibility will be to look at the terms and conditions of whatever loan that the airline gets into. And that's where I think our approval process will come in. But they can answer probably the details of that. On the issue of the shareholder management bill, there is a process going on driven by public enterprise to try to arrive at the appropriate legal framework that will allow for that to happen, where you create an overarching legislation for all SOCs. So that process is going on, driven by...
We mentioned that twice last year. We want it expedited. We know it's not in your department. We will write to you again and say, look, we'll write to Len Brown.
Can I just say that it sits with public enterprise?
Yeah, we'll write to both of you. You noting all this, Antonia?
We also would say that the documents, Mr. List, that you ask for, we'll try to expedite that. You get the documents in the meeting that we're talking about. I think the last question, probably I've dealt with what I thought was at the level of the board. Am I right? Did you? Yeah. I think that ends there. They can deal with the operational issues.
Thank you very much. Mr. Romano, are you going to lead it? Yes, okay.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, honorable members, for giving us opportunity to come and present. As the board, we've only been there for 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks we can only do up to a point. But as the board, We are aware of our responsibilities with regard to the PFMA, with regard to the Companies Act, with regard to the Shareholders Compact that we have also looked at. The key priorities that the Minister has given us was the issue of financial sustainability, and what we did was also to make sure that the 2014-15 and the 2015-16 financials are approved. So what we did as a board, we met immediately and met with the auditors. We appointed an interim finance committee to look into that. And in those deliberations, that's when we came up with the finalized numbers that the National Treasury will table in this House. So I'm happy to say those financials have actually been finalized. So it's just a matter of the technicalities with the auditors to sign and changing the whatever the wordings. Then the other key issue was the liquidity, because we saw in the financials is the issue of technical insolvency, liquidity. When you look into the balance sheet, you can see the short-term borrowings are maturing. There's a significant amount. So we had to sit and deliberate as the board. And in that deliberation, what we did as the board, we had to form committees of governance, and those committees are the Audit and Risk Committee, the Finance and Investment Committee, the Social and Ethics and Committee, the Human Resources and Nominations Committee, and also the turnaround strategy type of committee that will look in terms of how the airline will actually be turned around in that. So in those committees, we deployed relevant members of the board with the relevant expertise, and it is through those committees that we'll be able to come and present the way forward. Because currently, board, you don't want to be involved in the operations, but however, you deal with various structures of the board to ensure you manage the governance in that. So what I can say is that give us time, and then it is through that governance processes of the board that we'll be able to deliver on the mandate that has actually been placed in front of us. Thank you, Chair.
The other members, the acting CEO and the CFO.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll just address a few. We will come back in writing with answers to a number of the questions that were asked. I think the challenge I was pointing in, as far as media is concerned, we are not distracted by media. They actually put us on our toes. We are reacting to what they say. It is our job to see what they say and react to that. I think it's important that we put that in context. I was merely talking about the challenges. Yes, it's challenges that the media poses.
Excuse me, can I also point out to you that whenever you are in the media, I'm also distracted, okay? Because now the media phones me and I don't know what the hell is going on. And can you guys just negotiate and mediate? Because you see, you go to court. Don't blame the media. The media is hostile, right? I mean, really, I'm not from the Communist Party. Can you imagine how hostile they are to us? The point I'm trying to make is simple. You see, you go to court all the time. You are taken to court all the time, right? And so you're in the media. Now, if you managed better your performance and less conflictually, you will be less in the media and the chairperson will have a more productive life. Ask Floyd there. So I can't comment on these things. Firstly, I check. It's not my job as the chair of a committee to comment on internal labor disputes in a state-owned entity. Journalists, can we please get that straight? Don't harass me. I refuse to do things outside the law and the Constitution, right? So please stop harassing me. Let me stand up and say that. When I stand up, there's a new rule, Rule 31B, subclause 4, Roman numeral 5. When the chairperson stands up like a traditional leader, that is the decree. I live in hope. So all you journalists who are here, I don't know for what, because this is only a rehearsal. You should come next time in November when we can really discuss. I'm warning you now. You phone me, I'm handing the lawyer over to you. Advocate Jenkins, sort them out. And I hope Floyd's impressed because I'll be more productive. Thank you. Can you go on?
Just to comment on the maintenance issue, Chairperson, I want to make sure that the public is aware that we will not compromise on maintenance. We do not compromise on maintenance. The history of the airline shows we do not have issues around that. And so when we do cost compression exercises, they do not look at we do not compromise on maintenance. In fact, we are governed by a number of regulators that look at us, EASA, FAA, SAA, Civil Aviation Authority. So it's not, we're not going to touch any issues on maintenance when it comes to cost compression. I would like a CFO to comment on some of the other issues. Thanks, Chair.
Answer a question that does make a lot of sense, right? As a committee chair, I have to identify them. It is argued that you employed 3,426 people in that period. And obviously that's going to shoot up your expenses. Now Tandi's butting in as Tandi would do, if you don't know that already, and saying we want a report on the cost compression. I think that's a fair thing to say, right? And can you answer that question, for example, how is that possible? I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm just interested.
Chair, can we request that we put this answer in detail so that we can explain exactly what happened in that period? I think I don't want to take it high level. If we can just give the details when we come back to this committee.
All right, fine.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think I'll just touch base on three, Chair. The first one is on cost containment, where we were asked if this is not relating to the low fuel prices. It is not. This is more on the renegotiations of the lease rentals, on the renegotiations with our suppliers to have the reduced rates. These savings that we have saved are sustainable going forward. The second one, Chair, is on the operating costs, just high level. And again, we will do present a detailed analysis in terms of the operating cost. But the top 5 suppliers will provide. But I would like to highlight that the major 75% of the SAA's operating cost is made up of fuel, lease expenses, maintenance cost, and employee costs. The third one, Chair, is I would like to confirm that the financial statements, when you get them, they will comply with IFRS, they will have the segment report, they will have the contingency liabilities as prescribed in terms of the international financial reporting standards. The third one, Chair, is the technical issue that has been asked in terms of what has changed from the numbers that you have compared to the numbers that you are presenting. And you are correct, there's a difference of 950 million. And that is where even the auditors, it's not the auditors, Chair, it's the accounting standards. Because there was a delay in finalizing the 2014-15 numbers, the standards regulates you to whatever information becomes available from the time that from year end up to the date that the financial statements get signed. You need to take that into account, and you need to consider in terms of IS 10, which is the post-balance sheet event, you need to interrogate and check whether what happened in that period is adjustable or is not adjustable. So what happened in that period was the pending litigation where the proceedings went to court, and then the estimates, because everything relating to the litigations is more about the estimates and the judgments. So we had to increase the provision that we have made based on the new information that became available to our disposables. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Who wants to follow up? We've got 20 more minutes. But can we just draw clarity on the following one? Is you are going to, within a reasonable time after your report, say around the 7th, give us a written reply to all the questions raised. And then we are going to meet with you as soon as possible after the MTBPS is finished. You will deliver by next Friday or reasonably soon thereafter the annual reports in the normal form that the PFMA receives it. Bearing that in mind, we still have 20 minutes, and there are questions you can answer, even though we're having this phased approach, right? So then it's Floyd, Mr. Mania, Makosi, Tandi, Pinky, Sifiso.
Thank you, Chair. I think perhaps as the committee, we should record, Deputy Minister, our profuse disagreement with a possibility of private equity on SAA or any forms that will facilitate private participation in that space. It's extremely dangerous. Like, Africa's most successful airline is Ethiopian Airways now, is bigger than SAA. Well, SAA before Dudu Myeni was bigger. Now it's Ethiopian airline. It's fully owned by the Ethiopian government. One of the most successful airlines in the world is the Emirates. It's owned by the government of Dubai. Virtually all of those are controlled by the state. And the Chinese airlines have got a lot of them. They're like even regional ones. The state plays a central role there in terms of what should happen. Perhaps there can be a discussion, a far much deeper discussion on how do we coordinate and oversee state-owned enterprises and companies and not deploy people who are close to us who have got no clue of what is happening in those entities, are there only because they want to make quick monies and self-enrich themselves. I think those are the issues that we can discuss as a broad and deeper principle than thinking that a solution to crisis and problems that confront state-owned companies will be to introduce private equity or private participation and all those things. It's very problematic. Majority of companies, by the way, that get liquidated every day are private companies. It's not state-owned companies. And an airline is critical for the sustenance of our economy, for basic logistics and everything else. We need it. Private participants in that space might easily throw their hands in the air when there is a deeper crisis globally in terms of the economy. When they're no longer making profits, they can say, let's let go of this part of the business, and then we're drawn into a crisis. So there must be a far much more deeper, yes, ideological and political, technical, economic discussion on how we must deal with the ownership and control of the airline. I don't think that there must be consideration of anything that will take it out of the state ownership and control. Those are some of the things that must
Floyd, with due respect, everybody's got 3 minutes, right?
Sure.
I think your point is made. I'm sure somebody will respond if they care to. Maybe 3 minutes at most.
Thank you, Chair. My question is directed to the chairperson, who I see is now here. Will the chairperson, in the light of the preliminary report tabled here today, tell us whether she still believes that it is in the best interest of the airline that she doesn't resign? And if she believes that, why does she believe that? And secondly, given the fact that it appears that the Minister of Finance, who is, after all, represents the shareholder, opposed your appointment, did you at any time discuss your reappointment as chairperson of the board of SAA with President Jacob Zuma? And if you did, what are the particulars of those conversations?
I was going to ask you, Chairperson, to say something towards the end. You can respond when you do that. Presumably you caught up on some of the issues, but since you're here, I was going to ask you anyway to comment or make some general statements, whatever you wish. Who's next? Makosi.
Chair, just on the point that Floyd raised, I just wanted to say we must remember that it's very important for us to improve the productivity with our SOEs and the leadership as well as the management of SOEs, because the more we have state-owned entities in this fashion, it feeds into the narrative that the state cannot run its business, which is not true, because in other places, as is citing Ethiopia, it is actually a fact. But Chair, the other thing that I thought we forgot we left out, I would really, really love to get a disclosure on all the legal liabilities with the state-owned and with the SAA, because remember we also have that 1.2 billion a liability arising out of the competitions thing, and if they can disclose that, including all the legal suits that are there, that they must just give us a disclosure on all those potential legal liabilities. I think it's going to be very important for us to get that information so that we can see whether their strategy to deal with these legal matters is actually working or not.
Draw attention to Minister and the state-owned entity. This Parliament has repeatedly raised this issue. I think the Auditor General should do more. Decisions that are taken by state-owned entities and departments to go to court repeatedly at taxpayers' expense when they know they're going to lose these cases. Why can't the head of an SOE, whether it's the board chair or the CEO, or the DG or the minister, ideally the minister, should pay from their own pocket? We've had it. I'm very glad you raised that. We would like to know, why are you always going to court? And why are you always losing? So it seems to me. I don't know, you seem to lose all the time. Really, we're not going to have that. And I must look at the PFMA Advocate Jenkins, just guide us. We need to act in terms of the PFMA against DGs, accounting officers, politicians, not just the DG, SOE boards, and SOE CEOs. Thank you. Next.
No, Chair, I think you covered me, especially on the issue of consequences. There should be consequences, especially where there are lawsuits, including those of personnel, and people are able to win cases. And there's no consequences for those who made us to, or who made SA to have that kind of a fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The other issue, Chair, it's, of course, all of us agree, and I think this is what Honorable Myeni must also be aware of. SAA problems, all of us agree that are historical, and we won't really reduce them to one person. But the last issue, Chair, and I'm also calling on Floyd on the same issue. The last issue, Chair, is that I want to propose that in the next round of engagement with SAA, given the amount of responses that we want and all those things, maybe if it's possible, committee goes to SAA so that we have all these things, because it's issues of transformation, it's issues of cost containment that Thandi spoke to, and all other issues that we raised. It may be files and files, maybe go that way and be able to see who is loyal to SAA and not flying SAA from all of us as we go there. Sure.
But Chairperson, just quickly, Chairperson, I think this notion that we must egg walk around individuals who are causing disasters to state-owned enterprises and want to then throw collective responsibility
you're not allowed to
is wrong.
Speak. No.
Dudu Myeni is a problem in SAA and we must say it as
you're not
it is.
allowed to speak. If you have no right more than anybody else. Sifiso, you're next. You had your 3 minutes.
No. Thanks, Chair. Just two things from me. There's so much being said about our exposure to exchange rate movements. I would like to know whether we do have a strategy, for instance, hedging. Do we hedge? And if we don't, why are we not hedging? And so on. That's one. Two, Chair, as everybody was responding, people were very silent on many transformative issues which were raised. I don't want to read from that it's the importance that SAA give to transformative issues. I think Honorable Pink was very clear that from the party that we are coming from, and by the way, there is no mutual exclusivity between performance and economic inclusion, right? So that's very important. As we try to attain this, the sustainability, financial sustainability of the airline, let's not try to say if you transform, then there will be no financial sustainability.
Chair, Chair, did you put my seconds back that Pinky and Floyd and everybody took? My seconds that they took, did you put them back?
You get your Teboho is monitoring you. I don't know how.
Chair,
Can you please pay attention? Thandi speaks.
You see, he raised an ideological debate, but does not even listen. We'll come back to the issue of.
Good point, Thandi.
We'll come back at the issue of whether there is a need of private equity or not. It's not for today's engagement, Floyd. Don't take chances, Chair. I want to know how the 5 billion that has been allocated as a guarantee is going to be utilized. It might not be answered here, but we need details. I also want to know how SAA is adhering to the King Code governance principle. Because you see, the King Code governance principles are very clear on separation of powers. And that's the matter that we should speak to. For instance, there has been allegations before that suggest that the board operates on a full-time basis, sits on a full-time basis and taking decisions. And we want to allay the fears of those who have such perceptions that is not the case. And the other matter that I want us to speak to is the adjustment that will speak to the financial statements. You see, we need to look at the percentage terms of how those adjustments are not related to performance. If a quarter of your finances, for instance, for argument's sake, are utilized for litigation, we need to measure, because you see, Chair, the Auditor General said we must move away from just presenting financial statements, but to start to measure performance, right? So if half of the revenue...
Thandi, you're treading closely to 3 minutes.
Okay.
You can put it in writing.
Yeah, Chair, okay, let me leave it there and then... but the essence...
Yeah, I get the drift of what you... They're all very useful. Thank you. Mr. Lees. Antonio. Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just to follow up on my question with regard to the 950 million, I think it was partly answered, but am I understanding correctly that the 950 million is provision for the competition challenges from Nationwide and from Comair? If that is the case, please confirm. And then, Mr. Chairman, just to build on what a number of other people have said, but I said I asked the question of the Minister earlier about the need to look at what had been done by the previous board and board chair, and whether that in fact was reckless trading and a violation of Section 77.3, because that is exactly, I think, what many of us are saying, is there surely should be consequences, and not restricted, I agree, absolutely, to the board and to anyone who might have been. Thank you.
Next. Right. It's Antonia Mandamela, our researcher, for those of you who don't know. Go for it, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just have a quick comment to make about particularly the regional contribution. It's noted in the report that it contributes quite significantly to the revenue base. So really, when you come back, we would like to know, in fact, it would be of interest, what are your plans here with the regional hub? Are there plans to create a regional hub other than Johannesburg in the other African countries, just to have a base there in your international routes and so on? Just give us a bit of detail there when you come back. Thanks.
Over to the officials, and then we ask the chair to say whatever she wants to. Okay, go for it, please, quickly.
Can I start with the private participation discussion? Look, I mean, it's a debate, it's an open debate. We should have that debate, you're right. But you can't start a debate by saying you should exclude this part from the debate. So you should open up the debate and we have the debate. But can I say the following around this thing? Just to clarify the position. The position is that we need, and the board must look at the strategy. It must drive a process of stabilization of the airline. It must work towards bringing the airline to solvency. Included in that might be things like looking at whether is there a need, sufficient basis for recapitalization, whether is there sufficient basis for moving the direction of private participation. All of those things are open because there is no principal opposition to private participation in this thing. In any case, most of the people who talk about opposition to private participation, they are the first to support borrowing. We borrow from the private sector, by the way, from capital markets. So already there is private participation. It's just a theoretical and ideological block that we have in our heads. So the issue is open, should be open for discussion, but it will be based on what are the material facts that support the decision that we'll take. Coming back to the second issue, Honorable Buthelezi, you see, Comrade Siso, let's be very clear, I think, about this thing, that I think that it would be naive to think that we can say that transformation is not primary. It is a primary project that as a country we are involved in. But within that broad context, you cannot run down institutions effectively. So within as we are saying, our argument is primarily now where we are and the state of the airline, turning it around financially is fundamentally important. It is at the center of what we need to focus on. Anything else that we do must be aligned to that immediate objective. And that's probably the argument that we're making. And it's not an either or from where we're sitting, that these things go together. But if you cannot bring the airline back to financial sustainability, you'll probably kiss goodbye to any transformation agenda you have within the airline. That's the point we're making. So we have to prioritize prioritization in our approach to development, in our management of our institutions. That's probably the point that we wanted to make. There was a future growth thing, Chair. It struck me that we didn't respond to that. My sense is that they are reviewing it and they are looking at entity by entity, like from each associates, looking at what they are doing. Again, it underscores the point that we're making. Governance and proper management and proper running of these institutions is fundamentally important. We borrow in from capital markets. And people, before they borrow us money, they will actually assess the extent to which we are actually meeting the requirements and the extent to which their money invested with our SOCs will be paid back. It's just the nature of running entities and doing business. That's how it is. So much as we might raise concerns about the manner in which they raise their position and develop their position, but this underlying substantive issue that we must address the governance challenges of SOCs remains valid. We have to do that. Otherwise, if we don't deal with the institutional transformation, I tell you now, in the future, somebody will come and do it for us. And it won't be nice. It might be IMF, it might be somebody else who does it for us. Changing the face of and strengthening our institution, making sure that they are efficient, making sure that they deliver on what they are supposed to deliver on, ensuring that there's credibility and integrity in our institutions is fundamentally important. If we don't do those things, I tell you now, like many countries around in the world, somebody will do it for us, and it won't be nice.
Thanks. Over to you. You've got 3 minutes left. Pick up on whatever you want. DG, do you want to say anything? No. Okay. From SAA side, before I ask the Chair to say a few words. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to answer the question that was relating to 950, the 950, yes, the portion of it relates to the anti-competitive claims and other accounting adjustments. It's not only the anti-competitive claim. We will provide details as when we give you the detailed information.
Chairperson?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, the honorable members here and present, the leadership from the department, Deputy Minister, DG, and the executives and the officials in the ministry. SAA Deputy Chairperson, CEO, and the rest of the leadership that is here. First and foremost, Chair, may I thank you for understanding that I wasn't well this morning. I think something happened at night. Either I ate something that is not correct or whatever the reason. But I thank you very much for understanding. I have missed out on many questions that were asked earlier, and therefore I think it will be proper for me to look at the questions that have been raised together with the team from SAA and participate in the inputs of the report that will be sent back to the committee. The issue I would like to respond to, particularly to the issues of other successful airlines. I think we discussed this in the previous sitting, and what I would also suggest would be to bring a whole-of-state aviation policy framework that we discussed, because some of the successful airlines are fully supported by the country, their country. Just a classical example, if you fly to Addis Ababa, you're not allowed to do the internal network if you are a non-Ethiopian airline. You can only offload at the airport and go back. But with us, the market share is shrinking because of our airlift strategy. But it's a policy discussion, and I'm saying that in our response, we will attach that whole-of-state aviation policy framework, with your permission, Honorable Chair. The second part is a question from Honorable Myeni. First and foremost, the same question was asked in the previous sitting, and I responded comprehensively to the question. I think I will request, with the permission of the chairperson, to do the same, to respond in writing comprehensively as I did. But I just want to say, for the benefit of this committee, I never appoint myself. The appointment of the board is a cabinet decision. And therefore, I will also state those reasons in the letter. I just want also to thank the board of SAA, because within the 2 weeks of their appointment, the load has been taken off our shoulders. I'm sure there is an appreciation that the board has been lean and thin. It was a 3-member board. And it appeared that the board was operational because obviously 3 members would sit in all the board committees. Board committees sit monthly or bi-monthly, and therefore your face is seen every time in the company because you are attending to board committees. But for what has happened now, there was a quick process where we appointed the board committees, and in that regard, it's going to be a better board, a better airline, and with the support of our shareholder ministry. I do want also to thank the Deputy Minister that is here. Your continued support, Deputy Minister, is highly appreciated. And therefore, I think, Chair, with your permission, I will end there. Thank you.
Look, as I understand it, we're saying SA is a national asset. We want to feel proud of it. There are debates on what form, if any, there should be private participation. The majority party's view it shouldn't be privatized. The DA wants it privatized. Secondly, yes, we agree that the major challenge is financial, but you can't separate from the structural issues. The better you manage your finances, the more you're able to cope with the structural issues. The better you cope with the structural issues, the better you're able to. It's a dialectical thing, as you'll know from your past and other side. Thirdly, we think you should get a shareholder compact sorted out. We understand from SAA that they presented you a draft. Can you finalize the shareholder compact? Then, as part of the shareholder compact, we want a clearer turnaround strategy. It's not going to happen, Triposa. Romano, no, I know, not now. You're a financial expert. But when you come here in November, we want to see some elements of a clear turnaround strategy that's durable. And answering Floyd Chivambo's question, what will you do this time around that's different, at least signal to us? Then on the issue of the compact and the turnaround strategy must include the points Sifiso raised about transformation. It's finding the right balances on all these things. Transformation is crucial. It's inherent. I mean, the whole country is meant to be transformed, and we're not doing well enough. I love the way you said it, DM. If we don't do it, somebody else is going to do it for us. And in not a structured way, in not a strategic way necessarily. Look at the history of developing countries and revolutionary processes elsewhere. Then we feel within the law and the norms of Parliament, Advocate Jenkins will guide my letter, we want you to appoint at least one aviation expert. 2 is that we want to set a deadline that you must appoint the CEO and CFO reasonably soon. We will confer with experts in this area and ask what date seems reasonable. Then we are saying the shareholder management bill, Pinky's point, we think we need a shareholder management bill like never before. But here we want to say something, right? Both of you, if you like, need to behave. Because both of you are answerable. That's Treasury and South African Airways to this committee. And we're saying, let's be clear, SAA board chair and acting CEO. Firstly, we do not want the board chair or the board members interfering with the management. If you want to do that, lobby Parliament to change the Companies Act, the corporate governance norms and so on, and lobby for that. But don't do what is wrong. We're also saying that actually the department and Treasury, whatever their views are about one or other individual on the board, that is the board. You have to support that board effectively. So, you must monitor and evaluate, and so on, without unduly interfering in the space the board needs to function. That is why the shareholder management bill that Pinky asks for, and that the committee's been asking for, needs to come pronto. In short, don't unduly interfere, but on the other hand, the board chair and the board CEO and your teams have to realize that you're not a private sector company. That the department for now is the shareholder management department on behalf of government. And they're custodians of the people's entity. So, hey, just get it right. There's nothing for us to tell you. You know the laws are clear, the rules are clear. I'm told by global standards, they're very efficient, right? And look, comrades, colleagues, we are where we are now. We can look at the past and we must draw lessons from it, and people must be held to account, yes. But more crucially, as a committee, we have to come next time around. I would like this to be homework on our side, Antonia and others. Can we look at other examples of state-owned airlines? Let's look at the Ethiopian example. It's just that we're trading in territory that belongs to public enterprises, and where do we get the time? Floyd tells us through the media that they are full-time now using the national budget of this country to campaign, using our money, the people's money, to undermine the majority party for life. So that's a matter, Mr. Jenkins, I need some legal advice on. Is it constitutional for them to say they're not coming to Parliament and they're going to campaign for 2019 against the majority party? Let's look at whether our budget is being abused by Floyd Shivambu.
But there's no such a decision. There's no need to campaign the ANC because it's going to defeat itself. So.
Okay, so, colleagues, comrades, what we've agreed on, as I understand it, is next Friday or reasonably soon thereafter, we'd like, through the PFMA process, for things to be tabled. 2, by Monday this coming week, what's the date, Tebogo? Next Monday is what? 23rd, 26th. Members, can you do this, Antonia? Can you organize the questions by Friday and send it to the members? Then members can add questions. And between you and me, we'll cluster them. We'll give you the questions by next Tuesday or Wednesday. You don't have to rush, because your annual report will be tabled on Friday next week. So what I'm suggesting is by Monday the 11th, when we return to Parliament, is it Monday the 11th of October? Monday the 10th. We would like you to submit your answers. Then we will send it to, as it is, we don't interfere with it, we'll send it to the members. And then the only date I can see, the earliest date, remember we have no choice. The Money Bills Act, which you passed in Parliament while I was merrily in local government, right? So where are your people who passed this thing? It has this extremely onerous deadlines which we are reviewing. Now, for now, we have no choice. We have to sit till that Friday, what is it? I think the first date that's free, let me look at the draft program. The first dates that are free are 15th and 16th. So let's make it the 16th. We will look at SA on the 16th. Currently, we got it for the 30th, but maybe, given the number of questions, and let's agree that for now, we will meet you once a quarter. DM and your team and DG, we'd like the DG to be here, because SA we're going to prioritize, right? So the DG has to come, and the DM, and the board chair and the deputy chair. and then your team. So on process, I don't know what else we agreed on or more or less agreed on. Is that more or less it? Good, thank you everybody. And please, Natasha, no less, 2 o'clock. I'll be 15 minutes late, Thandi will chair because I'm meeting the auditor right now. You know the norm, by the way, I don't like this thing. What happens is the auditor meets the chairs of all the committees that he or she can, the team. I think in future, we should just get a small team, multi-party team to meet them. But I've got a problem now. I've got to be there at 1:15, and Mr. Myeni is making my life difficult. We have a little meeting with the DG, and if he's sensible, the meeting will finish in 2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you in particular to the board chair, the deputy chair, and the team, Peter Maluleke, and so on. I hope you were sympathetic to me, Peter. You never had it so challenging in your time. And the CEO and CFO. Thank you all.